Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the DN WhatIf, with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Became a Robot Named MegaMan. All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details, and go to the story link to say hi to the author. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now, let's get into the fanfic. Why are you being so mean, Kaken? Izuku Midoriya asked while holding in tears. He was currently standing between a boy that on the ground crying and a group of bullies, one of them being his former friend, Katsuki Bakugo. They had been teasing the kid, so Midoriya stepped to try and help him. If you keep hurting him, I'll stop you myself, he shouted nervously while attempting a fighting stance. Bakugo simply looked at Midoriya with blank eyes before his face morphed into an intimidating expression. So, you still pretend that you're a hero? A quirkless failure like you can never be a hero, Deku, he said with a smile that sent shivers down Midoriya's spine. To make it worse, he slammed his fists together, using his explosion quirk to scare him more. Then, the three kids rushed him, and they beat him up with extreme ease. After they finished and walked away, all Midoriya could do was stare at the sky with tired eyes, thinking one thing. All men are not created equal. 11 years later. As Midoriya entered his class, he was still in awe at the fight he witnessed on the way there. Seeing famous heroes at work, and the debut of one, was an amazing way to start the day. When he sat down at his desk and began writing notes, the teacher walked up front with a stack of papers. Okay class. You are all third years, and should be thinking about what careers you want. I have some forms for you to fill out, but, he said in a formal tone before throwing all the papers into the air. I know you all want to be in the hero course, he said with almost the entire class responding by using their quirks. As the teacher tried calming them down, one loud voice powered over the rest. Yo teach, don't lump me with the rest of these extras, Bakugo said with a cocky grin. The rest of the class was in an uproar, shouting their disagreement and anger. Then, the teacher looked at his file and called out something that caught his attention. Says here you're applying for UA. When he said that, the students started whispering their thoughts. The national school. The acceptance rate at that place is 0.2%. It's impossible to get in. After a few seconds, Bakugo stood up on his desk and took a confident pose. That's exactly why it's the only school good enough for me. I aced the mock test, and I have the best quirk out of all of you. Once I graduate from there, I will become the most famous hero alive. Even more than All Might, he shouted. Midoriya looked up and put up a small smirk by how determined he seemed to be. He then went back to doing his notes in peace. Hey, isn't Midoriya also applying for UA? The teacher asked. Oh no, he thought at once as he braced himself for what would happen next. Immediately, the entire class started laughing, saying how he couldn't get in by just studying, and he wasn't allowed since he was quirkless. He tried arguing against that by saying that they took out the rule, but he was interrupted by Bakugo blowing up his desk. Damn Deku, you're even worse than the rejects here. Why would they take a quirkless failure like you when they can have me? He asked menacingly. He tried saying something back, but he was too scared to even talk. They soon just returned to their seats. After class, while Midoriya was packing up his things, Bakugo and his two lackeys suddenly showed up and snatched away his analysis notebook. Hey, can you give that back? Midoriya asked while reaching for it. Bakugo simply responded by blowing up the notebook and throwing it out the window. Listen Deku, I want to be the only person from this crappy school to make it to UA, so they know what a true hero is. I don't want you ruining that for me, so just don't apply, or else, he said with a smile that screams anything but good while burning Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya gave a small meep. As he walked away, he put in one more thing. Hey, if you want a quirk so badly, just hope you get one in your next life and take a swan dive off the roof, he suggested before leaving the room. Midoriya stood there, shaking with both anger and sadness. Soon, he walked outside to find the burnt notebook that Bakugo tossed out. To his dismay, he found it in a small pond with some fish nibbling on it. My dreams have been turned to fish food, he thought as he grabbed his notebook. He then began the walk home, going at a slow pace. Moments of his life began to flash in his mind. Times when he would geek out over All Might, the day he learned he would never get a quirk, and his mom apologizing when he asked if he could still be a hero. Life had been really cruel to him. Soon, he was walking through an underpass. About halfway through, he heard something behind him. When he turned around, all he saw was a huge mound of sludge with a face. On instinct, he tried running away from it. However, The sludge villain quickly jumped him and began taking over his body. Midoriya tried struggling against it, but he couldn't do a thing since the body was primarily fluid. Before he lost consciousness, he felt a blast of air that blew away the villain and saw the silhouette of a man. Midoriya was woken up to someone lightly slapping his face. When he opened his eyes, he was greeted to the face of All Might 6 inches away. "Ah, you're okay," he boomed. That knocked Midoriya right back to his senses. He quickly slid Back's few away while screaming. All Might took little notice in that. "Sorry for getting you caught up in that. Normally, I don't get citizens involved. But I just got to this town and navigating the sewers is quite the challenge," he said while laughing to himself. "But thanks you, I have caught the villain," he said while showing off a bottle that had the sludge villain inside. Midoriya was simply shocked to have his idol standing right in front of him. "I need to get his autograph," he thought while reaching for his notebook. When he opened to what he thought was a blank page, turned out to be already signed. "Now, I must be on my way," he said while crouching down. Midoriya knew that this would probably be the only chance to talk to All Might, and he still had many questions he wanted to ask. Before All Might could take off, he rushed forward and grabbed onto his leg. 1 second later, he was soaring through the skies at an incredible speed. All Might finally noticed the little stowaway on his leg and told him to let go. After realizing what he said, he told him to hold on until they landed. Once they landed, All Might stepped away and attempted to take off again. "Wait, can I ask you a few questions?" Midoriya asked when he noticed that he was about to leave. "I cannot answer your questions now. I need to go," All Might said in an exasperated voice. Knowing he couldn't ask all the questions he wanted to, he decided on one that has been on his mind for years. "Can I become a hero, even without a quirk?" he blurted out while looking at the ground. He couldn't bear to look at him after asking that question. It was a stupid fantasy he'd been chasing ever since he was young. However, he didn't care how much far-fetched it sounded. All that matters is that he keeps on trying. He just wanted to see whether his idol thought it was possible. After a couple of seconds with no response, Midoriya risked a glance upwards. What he saw was a shriveled-up man with blonde hair in the spot where All Might was standing. He didn't know how to react to the sight in front of him. "Damn it, I didn't want a citizen to know about my true form," All Might said with annoyance. "Look, kid. Now that you've seen me like this, you can't tell anyone about it. I need people to think that I don't show any form of weakness," he explained while showing his injury. "And to answer your question, it's a very dangerous decision. Pros are constantly risking their lives against villains, even with their quirks. So no, I honestly don't think you can become a hero without a quirk." With that, any form of hope that Midoriya clinged on to had just vanished. All Might said something else, but it was simply drowned out by his own thoughts. That was it. Even the top hero says it's impossible. But of course, he had just been holding on to false hope. When he finally regained his surroundings, he found that All Might was gone. So he slowly made his way down the stairs and walked out of the building. He wasn't sure how long he walked, but he found himself in an alleyway. It didn't matter how or why. It all pointless no. His dream had been hacked away, and he was left with nothing. Midoriya placed his back against the wall and slid down it to sit down. Better than wandering around. As he sat, he began to silently cry. How many times have his hopes and dreams stomped on by fate? Why can't a single thing just go right for once? Suddenly, a blinding flash appeared right in front of him. The sound of electricity was prominent in the air. There was almost no time to react as the piercing light burned his eyes. Midoriya screamed in agony as he held his hands over his face. After a few seconds, the light faded away, and he was able to look at what the flash was. In front of him, a high-tech spherical capsule, about the size of his backpack. It was a rich shade of blue with gray linings. What was it, and how did it get there? Those questions were on Midoriya's mind as he inched closer to the mysterious object. Upon getting too close, a holographic image appeared, causing him to jump back in surprise. The image was of an old man wearing a lab coat and having a white beard. "Hello to the person that is watching this projection," the old man said with a strained voice. "My name is Dr. Thomas Light, a scientist in robotics that is far ahead of this time. I don't have that much time before he gets me, so I have to cut this short. There is a man who rules the underworld, an emperor of evil if you may. He holds terrifying power that cannot be bested by even the most powerful of quirks. The worst part is that he has some form of longevity that allows him to live on for decades. I have been trying to combat against him using robots that replicate the functions of quirks. But all of them have fallen. Even my most powerful creation and son MegaMan is no more. I know that there is no way to beat him now, but there is one hope. I have created 2 devices, one that can merge with a person and grant them abilities superior to MegaMan, and the other a time machine to send it into the future. I have no idea how far it will go, but this is all I can do. So I ask of you, please accept this power and stop evil. Whether it be that monster or any other villain, use this to help bring peace to the world. If you accept, insert your hand into the open slot. I hope you can usher in an era of peace. That is my final wish. This is Dr. Light, signing off. After that, the projection disappeared. Midoriya wasn't able to properly digest everything he had just heard. Time machine. Powerful villain. Robots. Bringing peace. It all seemed like something straight out of science fiction. At first, he thought it was just an elaborate prank. But when he thought about it, the device did seem too advanced for someone to make, let alone use for a prank. If this was real, he would be able to live out his dream, becoming the greatest hero and protecting society. Without further hesitation, he placed his left arm in the hole that the man talked about. The second he did, he felt something clamp down very tightly. It was like someone sticking a bunch of needles into his skin. The thing he felt the most was a rushing sensation in his head, almost as if he downloading information. When it was finished, he was able to pull out his arm. What he saw made him gasp in surprise. Attached to it was a blue arm cannon. It had 4 small yellow lamps on the side, and a red metal that was in the opening. Amazing! He whispered in awe as he continued examining the device. Suddenly, he heard an explosion from far away. Upon hearing it, he ran in the direction of it at a faster speed than normal. He arrived at the shopping district to see a crowd of people surrounding the area. Slipping through them, he got a clear view of what was happening. Wait, why is he here? He asked in shock when he saw the sludge villain. It was surrounded by flames and explosions seemed to be erupting from within the sludge. There's no way. All Might caught him in the bottle. Unless, he thought when he remembered that there was nothing in the hero's pockets after he landed. He silently gasped at the realization that it was his fault the villain got loose again. The heroes were surrounding it had grim and frustrated expressions on their faces. It was obvious that they couldn't do anything in this situation. Come on, why aren't the heroes doing anything? One of the bystanders asked. I heard that the villain has a hostage, another replied. When Midoriya heard that, he observed again in disbelief. The fact how the hostage was still alive was a miracle. After some moving around, he could finally see who the person was. To his utter shock, it was Bakugo. The pleading look in his eyes would hardly suggest of all the cruel things he has done in the past. Almost as if he were on autopilot, Midoriya shot off towards the villain and his former friend. Wait, you'll get yourself killed, he heard one of the pros shouted. But he kept on going. What the heck am I doing? Why am I running towards him? Midoriya thought in shock as his legs seemed to have a mind of their own. The biggest problem was that he didn't even have a plan for what to do. How the hell was he going to save Kaken from that thing? Suddenly, he remembered one of his notebooks that he wrote a line about. To restrain an opponent, a good way was to make them flinch first. He felt his arm shift back into the cannon, swung it forward, and fired. It shot out a small yellow ball of what seemed like light or energy. It struck the villain in the eye, causing him to roar in pain and reel back. Midoriya used the chance to try and claw Bakugo out. It did very little as the body was mostly fluid. What the hell? What you are doing here, Deku? Bakugo shouted after getting a chance to breathe. I don't know, I could just let you die. After recovering, the villain took another shot at him, only to be blocked by All Might. He quickly pulled the 2 boys away and brought his fist forward. Detroit smash, he yelled as a strong force of wind caused the villain to explode and splatter all over the street. The winds also made a small tornado, whipping up clouds around the area. The people could only stare in silence at the scene they had just witnessed. After a few seconds of standing in awe, the onlookers felt small drops of rain. They immediately began cheering for their symbol of peace. After the entire incident was wrapped up, Midoriya was walking back to his house. He had practically ignored the scolding the pro heroes have for being reckless. What he focusing on was the power he had just received. Along with the arm cannon that can appear at will, and the fact it can shoot small balls of energy, he also noticed that his physical capabilities and senses have improved. What was the extent of the device's power? All of those things he would have to investigate once he gets home. I am here. Midoriya was caught off guard as All Might suddenly appeared right in front of him. All Might, what are you doing here? He asked in surprise. Because I wanted to ag, he was saying before he abruptly changed back to his skinny form, spitting out blood. He wiped the blood from his mouth and donned a more serious expression. Like I said, I wanted to talk with you. The courage you showed today was a sight to behold. You, a normal citizen, charging straight into danger just to save a person. Well, I didn't really know what I was doing back there, Midoriya said sheepishly. All Might laughed the instant he heard it. You know, that feeling is what many great heroes have felt when they started their career, he explained. Midoriya's eyes lit up in amazement by hearing how he acted like a hero. It was one of the first compliments he has ever received in his entire life. Then, All Might's face changed to a solemn expression. I also wanted to change my answer. The question you asked me on the roof of that building. What you did today completely changed my opinion on you, he said. His next words set off something deep inside Midoriya's heart. Young man, you too can become a hero. Tears began rolling off his face. Crying wasn't something new to Midoriya, as he always cried when things got too bad. But this time, these tears were different. Instead of tears of sadness, they were tears of joy. It was the first time that someone had given him actual motivation. No one said that he could be one, not even his own mother. So hearing his words, it was the best feeling in the world. There wasn't anything that could possibly ruin this moment. Last thing, what was that cannon you made appear? All Might suddenly asked. Or maybe there was. After Midoriya explained everything he knew so far about his new power, All Might was intrigued. The part about how it was from the future seemed crazy, but it was put to rest the second Midoriya showed the arm cannon. So what you're saying is that by using this technology, you will help save humanity from tragic disasters in the future? He asked just to clarify. That's basically what the messages said. Judging by how he described it, it must have some functions that make it extremely useful in battle, Midoriya pondered as he looked at his weapon. From what he had seen so far, the power was not strong enough to battle with. The shit he fired at the villain only made it reel back, even when he hit it in a sensitive spot. The simple solution was to train it and find out more to it. Let me guess, you're thinking about training that power of yours? All Might suddenly asked. The fact he knew what he was thinking surprised him. How did you know? All Might dismissed it as just connecting the dots. That, or there is the chance that he could read other people's minds. Listen, I'm going to make you an offer. I propose that I help you train that power of yours until you've got a good grasp on it, he suggested. What? Midoriya screamed in shock. Was there something wrong with his head or ears? There was no way that All Might, #1 pro hero and symbol of peace, had just offered to train him. It had to be a dream or hallucination. Geez, kid. No need to freak out over it, All Might said with a sweat drop. But WWY? Midoriya asked, stuttering over every part of his sentence. Isn't it obvious? The man said that he sent that machine to help prevent conflicts and disasters that will happen. The fate of the world can be decided on how much you mastered the ability. As the symbol of peace, it's my duty to help keep society safe, he explained. Yeah, but still, I feel like I don't deserve this chance. Midoriya, it doesn't matter who does it as long as you get the proper training, All Might said with exasperation in his tone. What's important is that you learn the necessary skills to protect society. After that bit of reassurance, his decision was immediate. Okay, I accept your training. I need to learn how to improve my powers so I can rescue. Great, we start tomorrow. Meet me at Dagoba Beach at 5 am. All Might said with a grin. The two then walked away to go prepare for the next day. With Midoriya, his excitement level was off the charts. He was so close to exploding in euphoria. While he was fanboying, he failed to notice the small voice in his head say, "Solar charging completed. Full suit available to deploy." The next morning, when he woke up to the sound of his alarm going off, Midoriya looked around groggily. His entire room was so dark that no one could see anything. While that normally be the case, he found that he could see everything clearly. Probably just another ability, he thought as he got off his bed. Within a few minutes, he brushed his teeth, changed into a pair of clothes, and was currently eating breakfast. All those he did as silently as possible to avoid waking up his mother, whose soft snoring could be heard. After he finished eating, he quietly walked out of the apartment and began to jog towards his destination. After about 10 minutes, Midoriya had just reached the beach where All Might asked him to meet. It was 3 miles away from his apartment. Normally, he would be completely winded and on the ground from just doing 1 mile. His body was never the athletic type as he mostly focused on writing notes rather than exercise. Even then, it would take about 10 minutes to complete it. But now, he didn't even feel exhausted at all. It was like he could run back and forth from his home before he even felt tired. Added to the fact how he was about 3 times faster to how he normally was. The physical boost was amazing. When he got a good look at the beach, he was surprised to see it completely covered in trash. Had All Might not told him it was a beach, he would have thought it was a junkyard. A few minutes later, All Might pulled up in an old pickup truck. He was shocked to see Midoriya there so early. "Young Midoriya, how did you get here so early?" he asked. "I expected you to show up a couple of minutes after me. Not before me." Midoriya simply shrugged his shoulders. "Maybe it has something to do with that power I got," he speculated. "I noticed how I was faster than normal when I ran. That's some boost for a piece of tech. Speaking of which, we should try seeing what you are capable of right now," All Might suggested. "Try using that cannon so we can gauge how strong it is." Midoriya nodded and willed the cannon to appear. In a flash of blue light, he saw that it had appeared as it had before. However, something new happened as well. A light blue suit had covered his entire body from his neck all the way down to his ankles. Over it were blue armor pieces on his arms, legs, and pelvis. They kinda resembled bulky gauntlets. As a finishing touch, a blue helmet with light blue blocks jutting from the top and the side of it. Both Midoriya and All Might were speechless to the sudden change. "What the hell?" they both yelled at the same time. The shock lasted for a few seconds before they calmed down. "What's up with this suit? It didn't appear yesterday," Midoriya said as he began his signature muttering. "There has to be some sort of explanation. Maybe it has to do something with how long it's been with me. Like if it needs a certain amount of time to form it to my size. Or it could have something to do with how much energy it needs, which again has to do with the amount of me have this way faster. Have some way to gather energy other than a battery source. It could possibly the food or solar. Power buta doesn't have any form of solar panels." Slowly, his words blended into a heaped up pile of incoherent sounds. It was starting to freak All Might. "Cut it out," he yelled after it went on for a few minutes. That snapped Midoriya back to reality, and he blushed after realizing what he did. "Sorry, bad habit of mine," he said while scratching the back of his helmet. "I tend to mutter when I analyze something. It's become something I just do without thinking. Fine, back to the main issue. This suit could be a completed form or something, similar to how I change when I use my quirk. Maybe it could make your attack stronger than last time. Okay then, now to find a target," he thought to himself. He searched around for an object that was good for shooting at. His eyes fell on an old fridge on the sand. Bringing his arm up, he aimed and fired a shot at it. As he had seen before, a bullet made of energy shot out. When it hit, a small dent appeared. So a single shot is strong enough to put a dent in metal, All Might pondered impressively. On the other hand, Midoriya felt somewhat disappointed. He expected some more damage to be done. The shot wasn't that strong, so it had to have some upside. He tried thinking of some examples that could relate to his weapon. It could possibly work similarly to guns. They had some trade-offs when it came to how they fire. Thinking about semi-automatic guns, he readied his arm again, aiming at the lower half. This time, he fired a couple of shots in rapid succession. They all hit the same spot, making a dent bigger than the first one. "Impressive, young Midoriya. You figured out how to identify the weaknesses and strengths of your abilities. That's one of the first steps to mastering any skill," All Might congratulated while clapping him on the back. "The next step is to find different ways to utilize it. A good way I found to train it was to try and visualize how it feels like when you use. Try making some image to help you understand." As he closed his eyes to concentrate, he tried remembering what it felt like when he fired off a shot. After a few seconds, he started talking. "It felt like firing a slingshot. When I prepared to fire, it was like I was pulling back the rubber band," he explained. All Might just stared at him with a questioning expression. "A slingshot? Interesting example for power that is tech-based. Okay, we'll use that example. Your rapid shot was like you pulling it back a small distance before firing. How about you try pulling it back more to get a more powerful shot?" he suggested. As soon as the words left his mouth, Midoriya was already in firing position. He began charging his cannon for a few seconds. It was making a humming noise that sounded like it was from a game. After a few seconds, blue particles started swirling around his arm. He fired the shot towards the same fridge. This shot was a bit larger than a normal shot, and it was green instead of yellow. Another difference was that the dent it made was bigger than the one caused by his rapid-fire attack. Eager to test more, he started charging again. The same particles appeared after a bit, but he kept on going. After about 15 seconds, the particles changed from blue to yellow. He still kept charging to see if there was any more levels. When nothing changed after a minute, he fired off the shot. This one was even bigger than the last and was blue. But the most shocking was the difference in power. The green shot made a dent the size of a head. The blue shot made a dent the size of a person. It even knocked the fridge over. Both Midoriya and All Might gawked at the damage. "That's so cool," Midoriya gushed as he glanced from his cannon to the fridge. "Who knows how strong it will be when I train it." "There you go. Now that we know what you can do right now, we can officially start your training," All Might said as he walked in front of Midoriya. "So, how will training be like?" he asked curiously. The way All Might laughed to that made him a bit nervous. What really set the danger alert was when he changed to his buff form. "For the next 10 months, you will train your body to further enhance your abilities and attend you a high. As for what your training is, you must clean this section of the beach," All Might said while stretching out his arms. Midoriya blinked a few times before he registered what he had heard. "What?" he shouted. It seemed a little bit too much for one person to clean all that up in 10 months. On top of that, he was even given a workout that outlined exactly everything that he would do for the time being as well. Even his sleep was planned out. "Isn't this a bit too much? It may be difficult, but it's necessary to be prepared for Yua. This also helps you learn to give back to the community, as very few heroes do things that won't increase their fame," All Might explained while flashing his signature grin. Midoriya looked from him to the schedule and put a strained smile. "Yeah, I need to work twice as hard if I want to catch up." From the moment he said that line, 10 months worth of hell would follow suit. "Come on, keep going," All Might shouted at Midoriya, who was currently running around while holding a microwave. This was one of the many things he had to do in his training plan. The main focus of the plan was clearing up a certain part of the beach. The different types of trash would help exercise different muscles. Carrying objects would help increase his bicep and tricep muscles, while pushing them would increase quadriceps. The junk varied from normal things like old furniture and broken technology, which oddly made him shiver every time he saw it, to weird things like a safe. They started from things that weigh very little to progressively getting heavier. After some experimenting he found out that his power also gave him increased strength. It was obvious when he was able to lift up a car for a few minutes. All Might wanted him to do things the hard way, so he was prohibited from ever using his quirk on regular exercises. Cleaning the beach wasn't the only thing that he had to do. Almost all available time we wasn't at school or the beach was spent doing intense workouts. Push-ups, curl-ups, pull-ups, and many more different ways to get stronger. More times than he could count, he had forced himself to the point where he wasn't able to lift a finger for a few minutes. The combined efforts from both the beach and home training had caused extreme soreness that lingered 24/7. He had to constantly ask his mom to buy him muscle rub or Epsom salt just to ease the pain. But those weren't the only things he had asked his mother. His required amount of energy was abysmal. Huge meals with lots of protein were served daily for him, often asking for seconds. Of course, Midoriya intentionally ate less food than he needs. They weren't the richest family, so all the food would leave a heavy toll on the bank. To try and make up the missing energy, he would stand out in the sun for a few hours. It was something he discovered a few days after starting training. He had noticed that he was less tired if he worked out outside than if he worked out inside. He put this theory to the test by staying inside one day and staying outside the other. When he saw how he was less tired on the outside day, it confirmed that he was able to absorb solar energy. A final issue he faces while training was his schoolwork. More homework given out at this time of the year, to the dismay of every student. As workouts take up a majority of the day, he has little time to do a lot of homework. To make it worse, he also had to study for future tests and the UA written exam. That meant he had to cram in time to study, do homework, and train. On the plus side, Bakugo has mellowed out a bit after the villain attack. He still does throw rude comments and teases, but he doesn't seem like he is going out of his way just to make his life a living hell. The change in pace was quite relieving to Midoriya. Less bullying just means less stress. Hopefully, it would continue like that till the end of the year. Out of all the things he had to do within those 10 months, training his quirk was his most favorite part. He called it a quirk instead of power, so he wouldn't sound suspicious when talking about it. His daily practice routine would be lifting extremely heavy trash, doing long sprints, and firing off shots from the Mega Buster. He learned the name of his weapon accessing some memory files that the device had collected before it made the trip. Some files showed pictures of a beautiful metropolis and robots helping out humans in difficult tasks. It was amazing to see how robots were able to coexist along with people. However, other files showed that same city being ravaged and destroyed by attacking robots. From what he had learned, those were the robot masters that Dr. Wily made. They were robots that had different attributes and skills. Dr. Light wanted to stop him from causing any more mayhem, so he built a robot named MegaMan. MegaMan would time after time stop Wily's plan, only for him to make another scheme. Now it makes sense why he sent back the device. He thought after seeing the files. He wanted to see a world like that, just more peaceful. Seeing it made him more determined to reach his goal, to become the greatest hero and change the future. Back to his training, he was able to learn new things about his quirk. The first thing he learned was how his physical strength in his human form was correlated to the physical strength in his mega form, which he dubbed after his predecessor, MegaMan. As he got stronger and faster in from regular training, his quirk would make his form even more stronger and faster. About halfway through, he was able to increase the amount of time he could lift a car from a few minutes to half an hour. His max speed at the moment was able to keep up with a moving vehicle going at 25 miles per hour. That training exercise was one of the funniest things. The look on All Might's face was priceless when he saw Midoriya running alongside while he was driving. Other than his physical capabilities, the Mega Buster improved as well. His shots were slowly getting stronger. A regular shot only made a dent the size of his eye. Now, it grew to the size of his fist. Multiple shots were able to make a dent as big as his head. Along with those, charged-up shots got better than before. The most notable part was the small decrease in charge time. To charge up to the first level would normally take about 7 to 8 seconds, while a second-level shot would take 15 seconds. After quite a while, the time decreased to about 5 seconds for level 1 and 13 for level 2. The power increase was also noticeable. The level 1 shot only got a bit bigger than his head. Level 2 was the opposite, as it tore of about a quarter of a fridge. There were some new functions that he discovered during the training, such as finding out that the voice in his head was a computer unit, which he called mental programming for short, that helped increase his mental capacity and the ability of not having to breathe while underwater. But the most amazing thing he found out was that he was able to copy quirks. No joke, he could replicate almost any quirk. He learned this ability when he was at home. His mother, seeing how he was always sore, offered to give him a massage. Naturally, he tried to decline it, saying that she didn't have to do it. However, she won that argument and got him to lay down on the couch. Before she started, she used her telekinesis quirk to grab the bottle of muscle rub that was kept handy. Midoriya mentally chuckled at seeing her use it. Funny how a few months ago, I couldn't do anything unique since I was quirkless, he thought as his mother began to massage his back. It was complete bliss to feel all the fatigue he built up be eased away. It took every bit of willpower not to groan in relief. As she moved her way up to his shoulders, the MP spoke in his head. Emitter quirk, telekinesis, copied. Midoriya would have missed this while he was distracted by the massage. But he has learned to always be alert for anything the MP said. What it just said confused him though. Copied. What the heck does that mean, he thought. After his mom was finished, he went to his room to analyze what happened. The second he closed his door, he transformed into the suit. He gave a quick look over. There seemed to be nothing different from the last time. Next, he tried searching his database for anything related to telekinesis. After a bit of searching, he found a file that was labeled Copied Quirks. Curious, he opened the file and selected telekinesis. Right afterwards, a flash of light rose up from his feet all the way to his head. His color's scheme changed from blue to a darkish green, matching his own hair color. What the heck? He shouted by the sudden change. Was this a new form? He again looked over himself to see if anything else had changed. The only other difference was how his Megabuster changed from a cannon to something with a dome full of what looked like electricity. After examining it, he tried firing at a crumpled piece of paper. Instead of a ball of solar energy, it fired continuous rings of energy towards it. When said rings hit the paper, it slowly started to float towards the weapon. It took a few seconds until the paper made contact with the dome. Midoriya stopped using the weapon, and the paper fell to the floor. That's what it meant by quirk copied. It copied and replicated my mom's telekinesis, he muttered in awe. This revelation opened a door of endless possibilities. If he managed to replicate more quirks, he would in theory have almost no weaknesses. Pair that with his natural affinity to analyzing quirks, he'd be a force to reckon with. He immediately set off the next day to learn more about it. All day at school, he would try and find opportunities to make prolonged physical contact with someone, since that seemed to be the way it worked. The least likeliest subject would obviously be Bakugo. Just being next to would aggravate him, let alone touching him for a few seconds. A few days went by of this, and he was able to compile all the need-to-know basics. First, he had to make and remain in contact with someone for about 10 seconds. It didn't matter what they were wearing as long as he was touching them. Second, said person had to be in a positive or neutral mood to work. Any emotion that was negative like anger would block the attempt. Third, he had a separate energy supply for those quirks. Each time he used a quirk, the energy level would go down depending on how the quirk works. The only way to regain this energy was by drinking an energy drink, which seems very coincidental. With all that in mind, he decided to delete the quirks that he deemed had no use, which was practically all of them. The only ones he had left were his mom, and by the luckiest of chance, Kaken. It was a miracle how he managed to fulfill all the requirements without dying. Deleting his quirk would basically be like throwing away $1 million. All of those were things Midoriya went through in 10 months. After the 10 months were over, the same day as the UA entrance exam, he had accomplished his end goal. His body was in much better shape, and he gained more control over his quirk. On top of that, he even managed to not only clean one part of the beach, but the entire beach. As All Might looked at the product of training, he was thoroughly impressed. My young Midoriya. This is more than I could ever expect. You went above and beyond my expectations and have shown amazing results. Well, it was thanks to your guidance and support that I was able to get this far. I was pretty lucky to finish, Midoriya said sheepishly. Midoriya, luck has nothing to do with this. You did this through hard work and dedication. Always take pride in that, All Might said. Now get some rest. You'll need it to take the entrance exam today. Midoriya nodded and ran back home to take his first nap in a long time. 3 hours later. Upon reaching the gate, Midoriya stopped right in front of it. Ahead of him was UA High, the top hero school in the entire nation. Almost all the greatest heroes, All Might included, had graduated from there. Now, he was about to take the test that would basically decide his entire life. Just thinking about it made him very nervous. As he entered the gate, he heard a familiar voice behind him. Out of the way, Bakugo walked by with his usual miffed expression. Instinctually, he moved out the way to try and avoid any conflict. Bakugo simply just walked past him without a second glance. Once he was out of range, Midoriya sighed. Geez, just hearing Kaken makes me try to avoid him. I should focus on the exam rather than him. He turned towards the entrance and took his first step to becoming a hero, only to trip on his own foot. Guess I'll die, he thought as he was about to faceplant on the concrete. So much for being the savior of humanity. Right before impact, he felt a hand touch his back, and he suddenly stopped falling. After looking around, it turned out he was floating and weightless. The hand that caught him turned out to be a girl. She had chestnut-colored hair that was styled in a bob cut. Her cheeks had a natural pink blush, and she had a huge smile. The worst thing was that she was cute. Way too cute. Sorry for using my quirk on you. It would be bad luck if you fell before the exam, she said while clapping her hand together. When she did that, he suddenly felt his weight return. He would have speculated what her quirk was, but he was too distracted by the fact that a girl was actually talking to him. He tried to get some words out, but they would just get stuck in his throat. He silently cursed his MP for not giving him the skills to not be awkward. The girl didn't seem to notice his internal struggle and walked away after waving goodbye. At least some girl acknowledged me for once, he thought sourly. He then quickly rushed into the building to take the exam. 2 hours later. After the written portion was finished, they were asked to follow a pathway. He soon found himself in a huge auditorium with seats that were arranged in stairs. After consulting the ID card he received at the entrance, he located his seat amongst the rows of them. Because of his amazing luck, he found himself sitting right next to Bakugo. The boy hardly acknowledged the green-haired as he was just waiting for the damn thing to start. Suddenly, spotlight turned on from above the examiners. They focused on the stage where one man was standing. He had yellow hair that was curved at the back of his head and was wearing a metal device in his neck and some leather clothes. Seeing his signature hairstyle and speaker set, Midoriya instantly recognized the man as the voice hero, Present Mike. While he was busy fanboying, Present Mike started his speech. Hello listeners, and thank you for tuning in, he shouted. Can I get a hey? Silence the entire audience gave no form of response. Excellent response. I will now give you all the rundown for the practical, he yelled again, this time asking for a yeah. Again, all the examiners remained dead silent. After muttering something about a tough crowd, Present Mike resumed his speech. For the exam, you will be facing in a 10-minute mock urban battle. Depending on what your examiner number will decide which area you'll be testing in, okay? Their splitting is up, so we can't work with friends, Bakugo suddenly said, which caught Midoriya by surprise. Upon closer inspection, he saw that both of them will be in separate areas, even though their numbers were one after the other. While Bakugo was cursing about not being able to destroy him, Present Mike continued his explanation. In each arena, you will find 3 different types of robots. The point values you can earn are 1, 2, or again 3. Destroying the robot will earn you set amount of points. Destroy as many robots as possible to increase your score, he explained. I have a question. A voice echoed out from the crowd. A spotlight came down from where the person was sitting. It was a tall guy with short navy blue hair, glasses, and a stiff posture. In the pamphlet, you have listed 4 robots. If this is a mistake on official UA material, then that is shameful. We are exemplary students, and we expect the best from Japan's top school. Suddenly, he turned around and pointed straight at Midoriya. And you. You have been muttering the entire time. Stop it. If you are going to take this as a joke, then you should leave, he scolded. Midoriya meeped an apology and tried to shrink back into his seat. Unfortunately, the others were laughing at him for being called out. Not the best way to start an exam. After a few seconds of this, Present Mike quieted the laughter. Thanks for your question. Examinee 7111. The 4th robot is worth 0 points. It's more like an obstacle than an enemy. Each area will have one. It is made to go crazy in narrow spaces. I suggest you try to avoid it during the exam. It's not that it's impossible to beat, just that there is ultimately no point in taking it down. Thanks you and sorry for the interruption. The boy bowed deeply before sitting back down. The light above his head turned off right afterwards. That's all I have to say. As a farewell gift, I give you our school motto. Napoleon Bonaparte once said a hero is one that overcomes life's misfortunes. So go beyond. Plus ultra, he shouted. With that, they made their way out of the auditorium and filed on to separate buses. During the bus ride, Midoriya was busy trying to calm his nerves and do a quick diagnostics to see if he was in peak condition. Health, full. Solar energy, full. Weapon energy, full. Nervousness, off the charts, he thought worryingly to himself. His body may be ready to go, but his mind was a complete mess. Not even the MP unit could change his personality. He would have to depend on his own mind to bring it up. When the buses reached their destination, everyone was shocked at the size of the testing area. Just one of them was the size of a city, complete with roads, buildings, and even skyscrapers. The amount of funds necessary was too large to calculate by yourself. Back to Midoriya. He was looking around nervously to see who he was testing with. His eyes fell on the brown-haired girl from earlier. He never got the chance to thank her for catching him from an embarrassing fate. As he started walking over to her, he felt a hand clamp onto his shoulder. His brain quickly analyzed the hand. Strong, firm, fingers close together, suggesting a formal posture. Oh no, he thought as he knew who the person was before he even turned around. When he did, like his suspicions told him, it was the navy-haired boy that called him out. What do you think you are doing? She is obviously trying to calm herself for the exam. Were you trying to distract her and ruin her chances of passing? He asked in a strict tone. What? Of course not. I just wanted to thank her for something she did earlier. Midoriya tried explaining his reason, but the boy seemed to have already written him off as a troublemaker. By the looks of it, the entire crowd seemed to mark him off as a weak person or one less rival. He hated the fact despite his power, his personality came off as someone weak. No, you are not weak anymore. You have the power to fight, and they can't tell you otherwise. I show them that I belong here, he thought to himself as he put on a determined expression. Start. Present Mike suddenly shouted from the top of a tower that was outside the boundary of the testing area. Immediately, Midoriya ran inside the area, while the rest were looking around with confused expressions. What are you waiting for? There aren't countdowns in real fights. Get going. By the time the other participants got their bearings and started running in, Midoriya was already deep in the city. Right after he ran past the gate, Midoriya quickly got his suit on. He could feel his running get faster with each step that he took. The difference in speed from himself to the suit was almost unreal. But that was beside the point. He had to focus on getting as many points as he can. Even the shock looks from the other people that he just knew they were giving wasn't enough to break his concentration. Scanning his surroundings, he located a small group of 4 robots, a few meters away. Taking a hard left into an alleyway, he quickly saw his targets up ahead. In an area that opened up after the alley, 4 robots were looking around for any people. They were olive green and were shaped similarly to scorpions. 4 legs were attached to the body, bending towards the ground. Each leg had a plate of armor on the shin. A final touch was a tail that resembled the stinger. The head was on top of a tall mech, about the same height as the tail. On the both sides of the head were red lens which represented eyes. There were also 3 lens placed in a cavity on the main body. On the armor plates was the number 2 draw in yellow. Those must be the 2 pointers, Midoriya thought after quickly observing them. When he stepped into the clearing, all the robots turned in his direction. They immediately crawled right towards him at a considerably fast speed. Though they weren't fast enough, Midoriya aimed and fired 4 shots that precisely the middle of their heads. With their visual cut out, the robots started moving in random directions and swinging their tails in hopes of hitting something. That resulted in them running into walls and striking a nearby robot. While they stumbled around, Midoriya started to charge up. He then fired a huge level 2 shot that was able to take all of them down at once. That should be 8 points, he said before running off to find more. That proved to be a walk in the park, as he was able to scan the nearby area for robots. No robot that he laid eyes on survived, as they were destroyed within a matter of seconds. Some well-placed shots and a little melee combat was all it took to take them down. On the occasion, he would run into another examinee who seemed to have trouble. Naturally, he would just kept running. But something in both his mind and MP told him that he should help. So he would often block the robot's attacks to allow the person to either run or take it down. Most choose the former, which was good for him as he basically was rewarded free points. The robots themselves were not difficult nor complicated. They were simply just programmed to attack anyone they see, which made a great opportunity to exploit. The 1-pointers were the weakest, but also the fastest as they moved around on one wheel. Even so, they still couldn't keep up with his speed. The 3-pointers, on the other hand, were very slow but quite powerful. While the 1-pointer relied on their arms to do close-range damage, the 3-pointers were equipped with missiles. Freaking missiles. They could just comfortably stay in one place while bombarding you. Obviously, they weren't as strong as normal missiles. It was only as strong as a regular shot from the Mega Buster. If he knew that, he wouldn't almost have had a heart attack when one was fired at him. He made sure that one was thoroughly destroyed. In a room far away from the testing area, a group of people were observing each test through a big screen. They were watching the exam takers to evaluate if they have what it takes to get into UA. One of them was a small animal which wore a fancy vest. The species of the animal was extremely difficult to classify, but it seemed he didn't mind. He was giving a small speech about what they were looking for. This exam is meant to simulate a real-life villain chase. The students are given a small amount of time, and they don't know how many robots are in there. It forces them to adapt and form strategies to get as many points as they can, he explained in a happy tone. Some use information gathering to locate and track down both robots and people. It helps prevent any meaningless actions that result in no reward. As he said that, a picture of a guy with 6 arms was shown as he stood on top of a roof. He seemed to be observing the testing ground. Others rely on speed to pull ahead of the rest. Finding and taking down villains as quickly as possible is necessary, as it lowers the chances of them causing more trouble. The screen then changed to the navy-haired boy, who scolded Midoriya, skidding to a stop to change directions. He had small exhaust pipes on his calves with smoke coming out of them. Staying calm under pressure is quite an important thing. Hesitation often leads to villains taking advantage of that to run away or pull a sneak attack. The next picture showed a blonde-hair boy whose hair seemed to sparkle. His entire body seemed to sparkle, as a matter of fact. He was shooting a sparkly blue laser from his torso, which destroyed a robot. He seemed to be posing with no sign of fear on his face. And so is pure combat ability. Villains can be very strong, and you'll need exceptional power and skill to take them down. It then changed to Bakugo standing over the wreckage of a smoking robot. Though he was panting, he had a huge grin on his face. The most successful students are the ones that displays all of those traits. No great hero relies on just one to save the day. The screen finally changed to show Midoriya jumping over a robot and blasting the head off. This year's batch sure looks promising, the only woman in group remarked. Now we'll see how they react to a dangerous situation. The animal person presses a big red button that was in the middle of the control panel. After about 7 minutes, Midoriya had already accumulated 54 points. While he felt fairly confident that he had enough, he never dropped his guard and continued to look for any stray robots that were missed. The exam wasn't too difficult. The robots here are very weak compared to robots that were made in the future. I expected some big obstacle to weed out the strong from the weak. Looks like this was a piece of cake, he thought as he jogged at a leisurely pace. All he saw now were just people running around, trying to get extra points. Of the few was the nice girl who helped him. She called out that she had 28 points, and the navy-haired boy who called him out. He called out 45 points. Both impressive, but not enough to match his score. Danger. Large incoming robot. Huh, he thought before a huge column of dust rose up from in front of him. The ground suddenly began trembling like an earthquake was happening. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked in the direction of the source. A huge shadow loomed from within the veil. When the dust finally cleared up, everyone's jaw dropped. You have got to be kidding me. They call this an obstacle. Midoriya yelled while pointing toward the zero-pointer. Said robot who was a literal behemoth. It was taller than most of the buildings with arms that gripped the edge of the roofs. The wheels, which were designed like tanks, took up the entire 2-lane road. On its gigantic rectangle head, there were 8 small red lens, which of course were huge when compared to a person. The entire thing was scary enough to make a full man wet his pants. While no one actually did, they did not hesitate to run away at full speed. Most of them were screaming like little girls, even though some were guys going through puberty. Midoriya was tempted to run away, but he had to make sure no one got hurt either. Though the thought of staying anywhere near the zero-pointer wasn't comforting. Just one aspect of being a hero. He quickly started scanning the area for any heat signatures. After a few glances, no signals showed from under any piles of fallen rubble. Seeing the area confirmed, he was about to leave when, "Owa," a familiar voice came from behind him. He turned around to see the nice girl under a pile of rubble, which was also right in front of the robot's treads. He hadn't checked there since he thought no one would be that close. Big mistake on his part. It had landed on her leg, and she was obviously in pain. As she tried to move the rubble to no avail, he remembered what she said earlier that morning. It would be bad luck if you fell before the exam. He then quickly dashed right towards her. If he was to be a hero and savior of humanity, there was no way he could not help someone in trouble. In a few seconds, he was already in front of her. She looked up in surprise to see someone that came back for her, especially wearing such a strange outfit. He glanced up ahead to check how far the zero-pointer was. It was almost upon them, so he had to act fast. Using his left arm to effortlessly lift the slab of concrete, he pulled her out using his other hand. He ignored the shocked look that she gave when he did that. Running a quick scan over her body, he saw that the leg that was trapped was broken. He decided to carry her on his back until she could get some medical attention. When she was secured, he started to run in the opposite of the incoming robot. After getting a considerably safe distance from it, Midoriya started to slow down for a bit. They were out of the robot's reach, so it was okay to relax a little. Reality said otherwise when a piece of a building landed right next to them. It got so close that felt the small broken pieces hit his face. Great, now it's just going to crush us with debris, he thought sourly before turning to the robot. It was using its arms to destroy buildings and send the debris towards them. He knew that it was keep doing that until the test was over or it was destroyed. The latter seemed much more interesting to him. Obviously, not even a level 2 shot to the head would take it down. He started to scan over the robot to find any vulnerable spots. At the same time, he was charging up his cannon to fire the second he found something. After a few seconds, the scan pointed at a small area on the neck joint. The exposed wiring could possibly lead to short-circuiting and a chain reaction. Coincidentally, he finished charging up right afterwards. After adjusting the girl so he could get his left arm up, he took aim. There was a minuscule window of opportunity. If he was off by a foot, it would harmlessly hit the armored part around it. Thankfully, he was already a natural at noting every small detail. He fired the blast and watched as it flew towards its destination quite smoothly. When it hit, there was the normal explosion that always happened. He and the others stared at the robot, half expecting nothing to happen. Then, boom. Another explosion happened right above the first. And then another. And another. And even more started to appear along the head. As the explosions kept popping up around the body, the zero-pointer started to tip over backwards. In a satisfying scene, it slowly fell backwards. It landed in a thunderous crash with a huge dust column rising up. Everyone, except Midoriya himself, were speechless at the sight they had just witnessed. How someone managed to destroy that monstrosity of a robot completely baffled them. Midoriya just a look of disbelief and whistled in impress. "Thank you, Dr. Light and All Might," he whispered under his breath. This feat would have been inconceivable before he got the device, and it still would have been impossible without all the training he was given. He was lucky for all of these events to happen. As he was lost in thought, he barely registered the "look out" that came from behind him. He did register the shift in movement from the girl on his back, as it felt like she was reaching up. Turning around, he saw the nice girl looking up with both fear and relief in her eyes. Confused, he looked up to see what going on. Right above his head was a piece of debris the size of a small car. It was only 2 feet away from landing on him. The only thing that was stopping it was the fact how it was floating. He inhaled sharply as he realized as close he got to a serious injury. It probably would have gave him a concussion or worse, even with his helmet. Slowly, he backed away from it, as he didn't know when it would stop floating. Our release, the girl he was carrying sounded very strained. When she said that, the object resumed its action and crashed into the ground. Yep, definitely would have gave him a concussion. Time's up. Present Mike's voice suddenly echoed through the entire city. Everyone looked around in surprise as they weren't expecting it. Midoriya decided to finally set the girl down in the ground. She was looking very nauseous and green when he looked at her. The very next second, she turned away and hurled out the contents of her stomach. He quickly held his nose to not smell any of the puke that came out. Awkwardly, he rubbed her back in an attempt to make her feel better. It didn't make the entire thing less gross than it already was. After about a minute of puking, she finally stopped and was panting heavily. Thanks for saving me," she said weakly between breaths. "It was no problem. I just consider it as a thank you for helping me this morning," he replied. She looked at him in confusion and was studying his face. "Huh? What do you mean?" she asked. Midoriya guessed that since the helmet covered his hair, he had no other distinctive features. He then made his helmet disappear to let his curly green hair out. The girl gasped as she recognized who he was. "You're the boy that almost tripped this morning," she exclaimed while pointing at his face. He chuckled at her reaction. "Yeah, I wanted to thank you for saving me from embarrassing myself in front of everyone. And now I also have to thank you for saving me from getting my head destroyed," he said with another chuckle. Before she could give a response, a short old lady came and began asking for people who needed medical attention. He helped the girl up and brought her over to the lady. Once he placed her down in front of her, the old lady's lips suddenly grew huge. She then kissed the girl's legs, which then flowed green as they began healing. While it did gross him out a bit, he got over it, as it was all to help. Once the old lady was finished with everyone, all the students filed into the bus to take them back to the main campus. 1 week later, Midoriya was doing his daily weight lifts in his room to pass the time. All the training he did with All Might had made it an unbreakable habit of his. He did it he was bored, when he needed to calm down, and there were times he did it without realizing so. The memory of his mom catching him bench pressing the dumpster was still fresh in his mind. Now, he was waiting for his results on the exam. He did fairly good on it, and 54 points were no easy accomplishment. There was high hope that he would pass. "Izuku." The voice of his mom was quite high-pitched, indicating some form of shock or anxiety. Opening his door, his mom quickly showed a letter that, "It's from you, she said as she handed him the letter. After grabbing it, he walked to his desk and opened it up. To his surprise, instead of a normal piece of paper, a small metal disc fell out. He looked around it for a little before a hologram appeared from it. It caused him to jump back in surprise. It wasn't because of the sudden appearance, as he already went through that with Dr. Light. What got him was how it was All Might shouting, "I am here as a hologram." What the crap? All Might? Now you may be asking yourself, why is All Might doing in a UA result letter? To answer, I am proud to say that I will be teaching the next generation of heroes. The holographic All Might laughed heartily at Midoriya guessed would be the viewer's reaction. Though he was right to laugh as his face was dumbstruck by the news. "Young Midoriya, you passed the written exam with flying colors. Not only that, but you also scored 54 villain points on the practical. That alone would put you in the top 10 students. But there was another thing. We had a secret scoring method that would be decided upon by the teachers themselves. It was awarded to people who performed heroic actions, hero points. For your courageous act of saving someone, you have been 60 points, raising your total score to a whopping 114. That makes you the highest score out of everyone who took the exam. Congratulations, Midoriya. You are now a part of the Hero Academia." After the speech, the device showed a leaderboard of the top 10 scores. True to his word, Midoriya was first, with Bakugo coming in second. He could hardly contain his excitement as he processed all this information. "I got in," he shouted in triumph, while raising his arms in a victory pose. Last thing, I want to thank Izuku1215 for the shout-out on their fanfic, which I again would highly recommend to anyone and everyone. Midoriya had just put on his shoes and was about to leave when his mom walked up. Izuku, do you have everything you need? Yes. Supplies? Yes. Notebook? Yes. Handkerchief? Mom, I know that I'm not missing anything, he said in a slightly exasperated voice. His mom could be such a worrywart at times. Izuku? She asked nervously. Yeah. I just wanted to say that I am so proud of you, she said with a small smile. Midoriya returned an embarrassed smile as he said goodbye. He walked out of the apartment and began to jog towards the train station. He wasn't able to go as fast he wanted to because of the UA uniform he was wearing. The pants were too long, constricting, and clean to run in. While it was an annoyance, it was also a good symbol. That and the entire uniform proved to the entire world that he made it into UA. Just putting it on felt like a dream that he didn't want to wake up from. After he got on the train, he was looking around to see if anything interesting happening. There was the usual cramped crowd of people around him, the somewhat overwhelming smell of body odor and perfume, and the shaking of the train itself. Overall, pretty normal. About 40 minutes later, the train reached his destination, and he got off. The rest of the way to the school was already known to him, as he went this way when he took the exam. The path he took soon led to the front gates of UA. He stopped right in front of them and took in the sight. Ahead of the gates was the huge glass building that was the main campus. The actual building consisted of 4 structures arranged in a perfect square. Each of them were connected to the adjacent structure by what seemed like a corridor. Looking down, the front of the building had a small garden with some trees, grass, and a couple of flowers. Beyond them was the entrance. There were 3 big red doors that were marked by numbers 1 to 3. It probably meant that you should enter the door with your grade number. This is it. This school holds my future in it. I need to go there and grab that opportunity, Midoriya thought as he took his first step into his new school. It took a lot of willpower not to squeal in pure euphoria. My future is harder to find than I thought, he thought as he ran around the hallways. He was trying to find the classroom he was assigned to, 1A. That proved to be a challenge since the school was like a maze. He had to find it in the next 2 minutes or else he will be late. After some more searching, he saw a sign that stuck out of the wall that read 1A. He rushed over to the area near the sign to finally find the door. The extremely large door. The door that almost reached up to the ceiling. Geez, they must have built it for people with gigantification quirks, he said to himself while staring in awe. As he reached to open the door, he breathed a quick prayer. Please don't let Kaken and the glasses boy be in the same class. When he opened the door, the first thing he heard and saw proved that any higher being that heard him was just a jerk. Get your feet off the desk. That is official UA property, and we shouldn't be disrespecting that. The boy with the glasses yelled at another boy whose feet were propped on the desk. What? Someone shoved a stick up your ass or something? Bakugo asked cockily. Fine, let me start over. My name is Tenya Ida, and I am from the Sumi Private Academy, the now identified Ida said, while extending his hand. Bakugo took his greeting another way. Sumi, huh? So you think that makes you better than me? I gonna have fun blowing your head off this year, he said with a menacing tone. What? You dare threaten me, your own classmate? Are you sure you are in the right class? Ida asked in shock. Before their dispute could continue, Ida noticed Midoriya standing at the door. The entire class then turned to stare at him. Midoriya just froze at the many pairs of eyes that were on him. Suddenly, Ida started marching towards him. Hello? It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is... he started to say before Midoriya raised his hands to cut him off. Tenya Ida, I heard you. My name is Izuku Midoriya, he said nervously while shakily extending a hand. Ida firmly grasped it and shook his hand at a fast pace. As I said, it's a pleasure to meet you. I first have to apologize for what I did at the exam. It was extremely rude of me to call you out, as well as assuming you were trying to distract that girl before the test started. You shown extraordinary bravery when you saved her and perception for realizing the true intent of the exam. Your actions proved that you are the better student. Ida speedily apologized that left Midoriya speechless. He almost talked as fast as he did during his rambles. Almost. While that was going on, Midoriya decided to take the opportunity to try and replicate his quirk. Thankfully, Ida's handshake lasted a bit over 10 seconds, more than enough time to complete the process. Mutant quirk? Engine. Copied when Ida finally let go. He planned to apologize for copying his quirk without his permission. I know you, green-blue boy. A familiar voice exclaimed right behind him. He turned around to see the nice girl from the exam. She was also wearing a uniform, to which he internally complimented. Hey, "You're the girl from the exam," he said. "Yeah, I'm Ochako Uraraka. You were amazing back there. You were all like pew and the robot went like boom," she said in an onomatopoeic way, while moving her arms around to show emphasis. Midoriya started to get embarrassed by how much the girl was complimenting him. "It was really nothing," he said with a slight stutter. "If you're here to just socialize, then you should just leave right now." A bored voice came from behind Uraraka. When they turned around, what seemed like a huge yellow caterpillar with a face was lying down on the floor while sipping a juice box. "It took you all 8 seconds to quiet down. That irrationality won't cut it here." "What the heck is that?" all the students thought. The creature then unzipped the front of its body, and a tall man wearing all black stepped out from it. There was some type of cloth wrapped loosely around his neck. His face simply told everyone that he doesn't care about anything. So it's a sleeping bag. They all thought in relief, as it wasn't some mutant creature. The man finally spoke after a bit. "Hello class, my name is Shota Aizawa, and I will be your homeroom teacher," he said in monotonous tone. "What's up with this guy? He must be a pro if he teaches here. But why does he look so worn out?" Midoriya thought as he tried to figure out who this person was. Before he could access his MP unit, Aizawa took out a one-piece uniform that was red, blue, and white. "Put these on and me out in the field in 5 minutes." He then promptly left the classroom without a second thought. The entire class were confused by what had just happened. When all the class got to the field, Aizawa explained what they will be doing. "You all will be taking part in a quirk apprehension test to see what you are capable of." "What? But what about orientation? We'll miss it," Uraraka asked in worry. "If you want to be a hero, you can't waste your time on pointless ceremonies. Here at UA, we are famous for letting teachers run the class. That means I can run my class how I see fit. If you have a problem with that, you can leave this class," he explained with a commanding aura behind them. Katsuki Bakugo stepped forward. Bakugo walked forward to stand right in front of him. "What was your farthest softball throw in junior high?" 67 meters, I think," he replied after thinking about it. Aizawa then tossed in a softball and told him to stand in a circle that was drawn in the ground. "Try using your quirk. Do anything as long as you stay in the circle," he explained. Bakugo first did some stretches, and then got in position. He whipped his arm forward, and at the last second, made an explosion that propelled the ball farther than a normal toss. "Die," he shouted. Rings of air were left in the ball's wake as it soared into the sky. "Die," Midoriya thought as they watched the ball finally begin its descent. Landed on the ground and rolled for a bit before it stopped. The ball itself was shockingly in perfect condition despite being launched by an explosion. Aizawa watched with a neutral face while he held his phone. "This test will serve as a baseline. You all need to know what your maximum capabilities are. This is the most rational way to judge your potential," he explained while turning his phone to face the students. It reads 705.2 meters on the screen. "No way, that's crazy," the yellow-haired boy said in awe. "We can use our quirks as much as we want? This will be fun." The pink-haired girl cheered. Though no one noticed, Aizawa's face changed into a frown. "You think this is just fun and games? That your time here will be easy? For the next 3 years, UA will throw challenges meant to break you. If you think this test will be fun, then let's add a new rule. You will take and be scored on 8 physical tests. Whoever comes in last will be deemed to have no potential and be immediately expelled," he said with a devilish smile forming. Most of the students had the same reaction. "What? But that's not fair. This is only the first day. We can't get expelled like that," Uraraka argued. "Life's not fair. Natural disasters, large-scale villain attacks, catastrophic events that wipe out whole cities. We can't choose what will happen in the future. A hero's job is to adapt to it and resolve it," he countered. "So you better give this your all. Go beyond, plus ultra style." 50-meter dash. The first test was quite a simple one. How fast can you complete 50 meters? 2 people would go at a time and a device at the end would call out the time they got, which was accurate to 1/100th of a second. The first 2 to go was Ida and a green-haired girl who looked a little like a frog. They lined up at the start and began when the device gave the start off. Ida was running quite fast in long strides with the engines on his calves shooting out air. The frog girl was hopping long distances and landing before resuming the cycle. Ida finished first with a time of 3.04 seconds, while the girl got 5.58 seconds. Ida cursed under his breath, something about a second gear. Next was Uraraka and a blonde boy with a tail, which made Midoriya look twice. Before they started, she touched her clothes and her shoes. When they began, Uraraka was running normally while the boy used his tail as a springboard. He claimed first with at 5.49, while Uraraka got a slow time at 7.15. Still, she seemed quite happy with her time, saying how it was still faster than junior high. The next two were the pink-hair girl who unintentionally got all of them in this predicament, and the sparkly blonde French boy that Midoriya recognized from the exam. As the both got ready, the boy turned around with his hands behind his head and crouched. When the start was called, he jumped as fired a sparkly blue laser from his belt that made him fly. The pink hair ran normally. Midway through, the boy's laser fizzled out, and he stumbled to the ground. He quickly got up and shot another beam, but his opponent already passed him and got there first. With his time of 5.51, he made some comment about his quirk and stomach. Finally, it was Midoriya's turn to go with Bakugo. As he walked to the starting line, he materialized his suit on. Everyone, except Uraraka, Ida, and Aizawa, were completely shocked. "What the heck? What is that?" The yellow-hair boy asked in shock. "It's just my quirk," he answered casually. The student's reaction wasn't unexpected. It's not every day you see someone change into a blue suit. Though, the bigger issue was the look that Bakugo was giving. It was a mixture of shock, disbelief, confusion, and loathing rage all in one face. It sent a slight shiver down his back. Now is not the time to get overwhelmed, it's time to not get expelled. When he stood ready, an idea came to mind. Maybe I should try the new quirk I copied, he thought. He quickly activated the engine quirk and watched as the change happened. His bodysuit changed from light blue to a clear white. The gauntlets, leglets, helmet, and briefs changed very little from a deep blue to navy blue. Biggest change he saw was the exhaust pipes around his ankles and at the bottom of his feet. Other differences were that his helmet changed shape to be more aerodynamic with a visor in front of his face. His MP unit quickly did a scan and informed him all the basics to the suit. At this point, you could officially say that everyone was shocked, even the teacher. Where the hell did that come from? The same boy asked again. Everyone was too surprised to even say a word. Aizawa raised an eyebrow to it. All Midoriya could do was give an apologetic shrug. The look Bakugo was giving him just got more worse. Why wasn't the device starting already? Almost as if it read his thoughts, the device gave the alert to get ready. Ignoring all the looks, Midoriya kneeled forward so that his back knee almost touched the ground. That earned confused expressions from everyone. No one noticed the heat building up in the exhaust pipes. Go. The second the word was spoken, everyone understood the strange position he was doing. Fire came out his feet, and he shot forward like a bullet. His legs slid across the ground and his body was kept low to decrease air resistance. Bakugo tried using his explosions to boost himself. But alas, his attempt was futile to the speeding opponent. Midoriya flew past the finish line as the device called out his time of 2.08 seconds, while Bakugo got double the time at 4.15. Almost everyone's jaw dropped at what they just witnessed. "You have to be kidding me." That was the only thing said in the silence. Midoriya wasn't paying attention to that, and had deactivated the quirk. Checking the weapon energy for it, he saw that 1/6 of the total energy was gone. Though suddenly, "Damn it, Deku! You better start explaining that where you got that fucking quirk," Bakugo shouted as he charged towards him with explosions forming on his hands. Right before he got there, the explosions suddenly stopped as a cloth restrained Bakugo. Looking at the source, they saw Aizawa was holding the cloth, while his eyes were glowing red. "I hate using my quirk too much as it gives me serious dry eye. So you better calm yourself down before I expel you," he threatened. Upon closer inspection, Midoriya saw a familiar pair of golden goggles around the hero's neck. He recognized him as the Eraser hero, Eraserhead. After finally not trying to lunge at Midoriya, Bakugo just glared at him and walked back to where he was standing. Nodding to himself, he walked back to the group of students. Aizawa then cleared his throat and called the next pair. Grip strength. The students had moved from outside the field to inside a gym. They were given devices that would measure how strong their grip was. Once Midoriya was given his, he squeezed the handle as hard as he could. After a bit, he heard a beep come from it. Stopping his effort, he glanced at the screen to see what his score was. The screen read 480 kilograms. He whistled in impress as he knew that was way above average. He was about to share his score with the teacher when he heard someone shout. "No way, 540 kilograms. Dude, you are such a beast." The short ball hair has exclaimed in excitement. Turning around, he saw that the person was the tall masked guy with 6 arms. He had 3 of his hands wrapped around the handle, giving him extra force. Midoriya wasn't jealous at all for the guy. In fact, he was happy for Guy to get recognition, as he seemed to be the seclusive type. He continued his walk towards the teacher and showed him his score. The look in his face wasn't the same as the first test, as he probably wasn't surprised anymore. He wrote the score down and told him to wait. Standing long jump. The next test was outside again. They were given a sandbox, and they had to jump over it. The scoring worked on whether you made it or not. Bakugo went first, and he used his explosions to launch himself over. Next was the laser boy, who used his laser to propel himself over as well. When Midoriya came, everyone looked at him with observing expressions. It was honestly starting to creep him out. He took 2 steps back and ran forward. On the last step before the sandbox, he jumped up. He actually got pretty high, so he did a flip or two. Landing neatly at the other side, he extended his arms out to do the cliché landing pose. Aizawa muttered something about showing off. Repeated side steps. This test was simply just seeing how fast you can do side steps. Midoriya got an average score, much to the mocking surprise of some of his classmates. The person with the best score was the boy with balls for hair. He placed the balls down on either side of him and bounced off them. He made sure to expressively rub it in Midoriya's face. Ball throw. This test was actually the one Bakugo demonstrated at the beginning. You had to take a softball and throw it as far as possible. As long as you stayed in the circle, you could do anything. When Yororako was up, she looked at the ball and touched it with her 5 fingers. It momentarily glowed in a pink light. She lightly lobbed it into the air, and it slowly rose up. And it kept rising. It was just floating up continuously before it was out of sight. Aizawa then turned his phone towards the class, to which it showed the infinity symbol. Infinity? A few of the students shouted. As people were talking about it, Midoriya's name was called to go next. Immediately, everyone dropped what they were doing and focused on the boy. Lord, did they love making him feel awkward. As he stood in the circle, he weighed his options. In his normal form, he would only get a slightly above average score. He wanted to be completely sure that he wouldn't get expelled. His Mega Buster wouldn't work, as it would just destroy the ball. His mom's quirk? No, it attracts objects, not repels them. Ida's quirk? That would most likely make him go out of bounds. Kaken's quirk? Actually, that would work out. He then transformed his to his explosion quirk. This suit had a red bodysuit with small white lines bordering the armor pieces. The actual armor pieces were a bluish-purplish color that was extremely satisfying. The helmet had 2 white circles on top with green dots in the middle, resembling a pair of goggles. On the back were 3 red triangles that looked like an explosion. His left arm gauntlet changed, so that it would have the same white circle and green dot as the helmets, with a part sticking out to cover the back of his hand to end. It's just the chain blast suit from MegaMan 11. Look it up. There's more? The black hair boy with weird elbows exclaimed. That comment went unnoticed, as they were more focused in what Midoriya was going to do. He pulled his right arm back and threw the ball as hard as he could. It flew quite high for a normal pitch, but it was a letdown when you consider the previous scores. That's it. I expected more with that flashy suit if yours, the ball hair boy said smugly. Before he could say anything else, Midoriya did something unexpected. He swung his left arm in an upward arc. Right afterwards, a couple of black balls with orange dots on them appeared and quickly floated in the direction of the now falling ball. Everyone watched in curiosity as the mysterious objects got closer to the ball. When they got pretty close, Midoriya snapped his fingers. The objects then detonated, collectively causing a huge explosion. The ball soared back up into the air by the force of the blast. When it landed, Aizawa showed the score to be 768.1 meters. This time, no one had anything to say. The rest of the tests were quite exceptional to him, especially the endurance running, where Aizawa literally had to force him to stop because he running for too long. After all the tests were over, they gathered in front of their teacher. He clicked a device that made a hologram appear. This is your rankings based on overall score. There is no point in reading them myself, so do it yourself, he said. Midoriya quickly looked around the top spot to see what place he was in. His name was in the 2nd place slot, right beneath someone named Momo Yaoyorozu. He chuckled to himself, saying how he was so close to first. At least he wasn't last place. Speaking of which, the person in last place was Mainta, who turned out to be the boy that acted smug when he won the side-stepping test. He was on the floor, bawling his eyes out over the prospect of being expelled. Oh yeah, that threat of expulsion was just a lie. I wanted to motivate you to do your best, Aizawa suddenly said. What? Most of the class yelled in surprise and anger. A tall raven hair girl shook her head. You guys didn't know? I thought it was obvious. And you knew? Midoriya thought as he stared at the girl in disbelief. Aizawa then dismissed the class for the day and told them to pick up a syllabus in the classroom. Everyone soon filed off the field, most with annoyed expressions on their faces. As Midoriya was walking towards the gate, he couldn't help but chuckle at all the things that had happened today. It was a pretty interesting way to start his first day in high school. Hello, Midoriya. A shout behind him, which he quickly recognized as Ida. True to his guess, Ida showed up right next to him and matched his pace. He began talking about what he thought of the tests. It was clear that he too was slightly miffed at the lie they were told, but he dismissed it as being necessary for a prestigious school like UA. He realized that Ida wasn't a rude person, just someone who cared a lot about school. A lot about school. Hey guys, are you going to the train station? Another shout came behind them. Again, it was easy to recognize the bubbly voice of Uraraka. When she caught up to them, the both stopped walking to talk. You're Ida, right? And you're Deku, she said while pointing at both of them. Huh, where'd you get that from? Midoriya asked. It had been quite a while since anyone but Kaken called him that. He didn't want that to start over again. Yeah, isn't that what Bakugo called you when he ran towards you? She asked for confirmation. My actual name is Izuku Midoriya. Deku is an insult that Kaken uses to make fun of you, he explained. That's not very nice of him, Ito remarked. Uraraka gasped and did a quick bow. Sorry, I didn't know that you saw it as an insult. Though in my opinion, I kinda like it. It sounds like, you can do it, if you get what I mean. Deku it is, he shouted with his face turning red. But I thought you saw it as an insult? Ida asked accusingly. Midoriya just covered his face and mumbled something about her changing the meaning. After that situation, the three newly formed friends made their way to the train station. The next day, school took a different turn from what it did yesterday. They had to take regular courses such as math and English. Ironically, English was taught by Present Mike. Okay class, tell me which of these sentences are incorrect, he asked at a reasonable volume after writing 4 sentences on the chalkboard. So boring, almost all the class thought in unison. Present Mike suddenly shouted that English was super cool and that they shouldn't be bored by it. After the core classes, lunch was held in the middle of the day. All 3 grades ate lunch together in the cafeteria. Thanks to the presence of the cooking hero, Lunch Rush, you could purchase pretty good food for a surprisingly cheap price. Midoriya absolutely gushed when he found out that a hero made the lunches. In the afternoon came basic hero training. When the class sat down, they noticed that their teacher wasn't there. Suddenly, speeding footsteps could be heard were getting closer to the classroom. The doors suddenly slid open quickly. I am here, coming in like a normal person, All Might shouted as he leaned in through the doorway. Whoa, All Might! Half of the class yelled in disbelief. The other half had impressed looks in their faces. As he marched to the front of the room, someone commented that he was wearing his Silver Age costume. When he got to the podium, he turned towards the students. Hello students. This class will teaching you all the need-to-know basics about being a hero. Think of it as Hero 101. For today's exercise, you will be performing in combat trials. He yelled as he pulled out a flash card with the word battle printed on it in orange. At the word battle, Bakugo grinned maliciously and Midoriya gulped in nervousness. In addition, we have a surprise for you All Might said while pressing a button in a remote. When he did, the walls to his right slid out to reveal racks. There were 5 racks that held 19 suitcases that were labeled in numerical order. Your hero costume designs that you submitted before school started have just arrived, and you will be wearing them for today, he explained while doing a flexing pose for some reason. He then told them to change into their costumes and meet him in ground beta. Afterwards, he swiftly dashed out of the room in a blink of an eye. As the students got up to get their suitcases, some of them noticed something odd. There was 20 students in total in the class, yet there was only 19 costumes. Did one of them forget to register their costume designs? As they thought that, no one noticed that Midoriya had walked out right after All Might left. A couple of minutes later, All Might was waiting in front of a large tunnel with Midoriya standing closer to the tunnel. He had gotten there first as he didn't have or need a costume from the government. His suit could technically be counted as one. Before, he was freaking out about how to put down a costume design since he was registered as quirkless. After a quick phone call with All Might, he found that not only could he still register his new quirk, but he also didn't have to submit a costume design because his quirk already gave him one. He asked the officials at the registration about it, and they told him the same thing. When everyone arrived, it was like a Halloween party. Elaborate and unique costumes ranging from simple clothing to suits of armor to bodysuits. They already looked like pros if you didn't factor in their young faces. All Might complimented them on how cool they looked. "Hey Deku, where is your costume?" Yuroroka asked when she noticed him in his blue suit. "This is my costume." "What? But I thought that was just your quirk? How is it your costume?" she asked in surprise. After explaining to her the circumstances, she nodded her head in understanding. "That's pretty great. You can instantly get it on and off, and it fits you so perfectly." "They made mine skin tight, which is a bit too much," she said while scratching her head. Now that he looked, he saw that she was wearing a skin-tight bodysuit. It was conforming to almost every detail on her body shape. He turned his head away in embarrassment, saying that it looked nice. The purple ball boy, Minta, have a thumbs up and said how that was why he loved this class. Sooner or later, he was going to get what was coming to him. "Alright, are you ready, you bunch of newbies?" All Might asked with a flashing grin. "As I said, you all will be doing indoor combat. While most fights happen outside, the most cleverest of villains always work in the shadows. Illegal deals, lairs, and other heinous acts. This test will simulate the experience of fighting a person." Right afterwards, the questions started rushing in. How will wins and losses be decided? Can we hurt our opponents as much as we can? Will we be given another expulsion threat? How will teams be arranged? Isn't my cape just dazzling? After a few seconds of it, All Might silenced them and pulled out a very tiny script book. Here is the scenario. The villains have hidden a nuclear bomb in the building. After 5 minutes, the heroes must enter the building and retrieve the weapon or capture the villains with capture tape within 15 minutes to win. On the other hand, the villains win if they protect the weapon until time runs out, or they subdue the heroes. Each of you will be randomly split into teams of 2, he explained. Isn't there a better way to make teams? The person in armor, who was now easy to identify as Ida, asked. Think about it. Pros are often forced to work with others on the spot, Midoriya suggested. After an affirmative nod, Ida bowed in apology and let him continue. All Might then brought out a box with lots. He asked that each of them to take out a number. Whoever had the same number as you will be your partner. After the lots, Midoriya found out that he would be partners with Uraraka as Team A. Isn't that great, Deku? We get to be partners, she said enthusiastically. He agreed with much less energy. As the teams were voicing their opinions on who their partner was, All Might brought out 2 more boxes. One was white with the word heroes printed in black, and the other was black with the word villains printed in white. I declare that the first matchup will be these guys, he shouted as he stuck his hands both of the boxes and pulling out 1 ball from each box. The ball from the hero box had the letter A on it, while the ball from the villain box had the letter D. Midoriya and Uraraka are the heroes. Bakugo and Ida are the villains. Be prepared to start in 5 minutes, he shouted. Midoriya instantly freezed up when he heard that he was fighting Bakugo. Knowing him, he would ignore the point of the exercise and target him instantly. Even with his mega powers, it would take at least 2 people to even have a chance of taking Bakugo down. The problem was that Uraraka didn't seem to have a combat-oriented quirk, as she was only shown to make things float. To make matters even worse, Ida was skilled enough to devise some plan to make it harder for them to retrieve the weapon. Hey Deku, are you listening? The sudden question snapped him out of his analyzing. He turned to see Uraraka, giving him a strange look. Sorry, did you say something? He sheepishly asked. Yeah, I was wondering if you had some sort of plan. Well, I'm not too sure of what to do. We are at a huge disadvantage, mostly due to Kaken's skill and Ida's speed. The only chance we got is me using my knowledge of Kaken for us to try and predict his moves. He was close to starting one of his rambles, but he was able to stop before it could get out. Uraraka still seemed very optimistic. Don't worry, we can do it. We can take them on. Right afterwards, the 5 minutes were up, and the 2 entered the building. Separate to the testing ground was a surveillance room, which All Might and the rest of the students were. They could watch each test from cameras that were placed in and out of the building. The reasoning was to both have the students learn from other battles, and to stop matches if they get out of hand. Now, they were watching Midoriya and Uraraka slowly make their way through each hallway. Who do you think is gonna win? The black-haired kid with weird elbows, Zero asked. I don't know. Both Bakugo and Midoriya scored high on the apprehension test. The pink-haired girl, Ashido, replied after thinking. Nah, I'm rooting for Midoriya. Come on, you guys saw how he had those suits that made him extremely fast, and have explosives, the yellow hair, Kaminari argued. Now that you mention it, his opponents have those quirks. Bakugo has an explosion quirk, while Ida had an engine quirk, the raven hair girl, Yaoyorozu said while scratching her chin. While they were discussing the possible outcome of the match, All Might focused entirely on Midoriya. This was the first time he would use his trained powers against a person. I hope you're ready, he thought. As he and Uraraka turned the next corridor, he was constantly scanning for any signs of Bakugo. The range of his scan allowed him to basically see what was inside the building. Currently, Ida was standing in a large room with a bomb next to him and Bakugo was roaming the same floor as them, albeit on the other side. His plan was to sneak up on Ida and have Uraraka distract him so he could dash towards the weapon. It was simple in theory, but the biggest problem was ironically Bakugo. What should we do? Uraraka asked. At first, he came up with nothing. Then as he began to think a bit more broadly, a crazy idea popped in his head. Here is what we'll do. I'll go distract Kaken and lead him away. You need to go retrieve the weapon from Ida. What? But it's not safe to take them on one by one. We should take him down as a team, she yelled as quietly as she could. Midoriya shook his head. But if we try that, we won't be able to retrieve the weapon. If he can hold his own for long enough, time will just run out. This is the only way. Uraraka tried to suggest other ideas, but it was immediately shot down after he explained how ineffective they were. After a few seconds, she looked at him as though she was going to make one last attempt to convince. Kaken has close proximity to location. Immediately, he tackled Uraraka out of the range of the explosion Bakugo made when he appeared from the corner. How did he get here so fast? I stopped scanning for just a moment, and he just popped up out of nowhere, Midoriya thought as he got in a defensive stance. Bakugo waved the smoke away with one hand, while not taking his eyes off his opponent. He looked ready to blow up anything that annoyed him the slightest, which so happened to be Midoriya. Uraraka, go now and get the weapon. I can't leave you to fight Bakugo, Uraraka persisted. If you don't go now, we may lose the exercise, so just go. He gave her a determined smile that oddly put her at ease. Reluctantly, she ran past him and Bakugo to the location where Ida was. As he expected, Bakugo paid little attention to her as he was focused on fighting him. Rearing his left arm back, he got ready to counterattack. Like he predicted, Bakugo quickly charged at him. He reared back his right arm to deliver a fierce hook to the jaw. But if only it weren't so predictable, Midoriya rushed towards him and jumped over his head. Out of all the possible moves he could have done, no one was expecting him to do such an interesting dodge. Once he landed, he spun around on his right foot to give Bakugo a swift roundhouse kick to the back of the head. His body pitched forward and rolled to avoid falling flat on the floor. After rolling a few times, he turned around and his face had changed from anger to disbelief, and even more anger. What the hell was that? You shouldn't be able to even lay a fucking hand on me. You're just a pathetic Deku. His face was transitioning back to his pure anger expression. I am not that anymore. I am not the Deku who can't do anything. I'm the Deku that can do anything. In response, Bakugo then gave him a murderous glare. Well, then I'll just have to beat you down so badly that you won't be able to do a thing. With that, he fired 2 explosions and launched towards him. Midoriya tried firing 2 shots to hit him mid-air, but they were easily dodged. He ducked at the last minute as Bakugo released an explosion right where his head used to be and flew past him. Quickly turning around, he was about to fire again when he noticed a gloved hand right in front of his face. An explosion hit him point blank and sent him back a few feet. Thankfully, his helmet took most of the force, and he got away with a small burn. Bakugo then dashed towards him with his arm outstretched, most likely to grab his face and release multiple explosions. Before his hand could reach Midoriya's face, Midoriya raised his left arm to block it. Bakugo's hand grabbed the blue gauntlet instead, and let off a few explosions. The armor piece wasn't damaged in the slightest. Nice try, but I got you now. That fucking pea shooter of yours only fires from your left arm. Since you can't aim at me, you can't hit me with it, Bakugo states smugly as he readied his right hand. To his surprise, Midoriya just chuckled in response. That's a very logical deduction, Kaken. I'm impressed you were able to make that theory. There is only one small problem with that, he said in a song voice. Suddenly, Midoriya raised his Mega Buster on his right hand up to Bakugo's face. Before he could react, he got hit point blank by a regular shot. It felt like someone hit with a hard punch. Stumbling back a few steps, he glared at Midoriya with rage. That's it, you're dead, he shouted as he charged at him again. He was determined to show that nerd his place as below him. As Midoriya watched Bakugo charge at him, he tried formulating a plan of action. His opponent was an enraged battle-hungry bomb who would not stop until he was broken and beaten. Even if he did make it out, he still had to help Uraraka get the weapon from Ida. There wasn't that much time left, so he had to finish this battle quickly. He used up most of his tricks, meaning he couldn't use them again since Bakugo would know what to expect and exploit it. The only trump cards he had left were his charged shots and replicated quirks. Once that thought ran across his mind, an idea popped up. Right before Bakugo could hit him, he dashed away and began running. What? Why is he running? The red-hair boy, Kirishima, asked when he saw Midoriya running away from his opponent. Almost everyone was confused by his actions. Maybe he realized Bakugo was too strong for him and opted to distract him instead. The purple-hair girl with strange earlobes, Gyro, suggested. If that's the case, it's useless since it relies on his partner succeeding. Which isn't happening, Yaoyorozu said, while looking at another screen. It showed Uraraka trying to get the weapon from Ida, but it was failing horribly. He was moving the weapon away from her every time she got close. With his speed quirk, it was impossible for her to get the weapon on her own before time ran out. In general, the hero team wasn't doing too well in the exercise. When they turned back to Midoriya's screen, they saw he wasn't there. Where the heck did he go? Kaminari asked in confusion. The screen only showed Bakugo running around, still trying to find his green-hair opponent. Speaking of which, he was coming to an intersection that went left and right. He took the right passage and disappeared behind the wall. It seems that there is no camera for that area, All Might thought out loud. While they were nodding their heads, the unexpected happened. In a blur, Bakugo suddenly flew back from the way he went and crashed into the floor. What the hell? Most of the class, All Might included, yelled in surprise. How the hell did Bakugo get sent flying? As if to answer their question, Midoriya walked out from where Bakugo came flying from. He had the white and blue form that he used during the apprehension test. Hey, isn't that the same thing suit he used during the test? The frog girl, Asui, pointed out. He probably used the engines on his feet to boost himself to power a knee attack, Yaoyorozu speculated. Back to the two fighters, Midoriya was surprised by the fact that actually worked. When he first thought of using the surprise attack, he immediately expected Kaken to dodge it and blast him in the back. So he made a contingency plan that we was about to execute. He didn't expect the frontal assault to work perfectly. There wasn't much time to ponder as Bakugo was starting to get back up. Midoriya knew it would be bad if he recovered, so he quickly changed to his normal form and started charging. By the time Bakugo had looked up, he was already finished charging a level 1 shot. He fired at his opponent, which hit him directly in the chest and caused him to get knocked over. He tried charging another shot, but Bakugo was not going to let the same thing happen again. He quickly got up and rocketed towards him with an explosion. Midoriya tried firing again, but it was again dodged. Once he was in front of him, he then delivered a left hook right to the stomach. Not letting up, he started to rain multiple punches on the blue boy's body. To add a little kick, he used an explosion on each punch to give more damage. Midoriya tried raising his arms to block upcoming attacks, but he then aimed to knock them out of the way. You still think you can beat me, nerd? Bakugo asked menacingly as he kept at the attacks with unrelenting force. Midoriya ignored it and kept trying to protect his body. Suddenly, Midoriya brought his right fist up and landed a strong uppercut to the jaw. That made Bakugo dazed for a few moments, which was more than enough time. Quickly, he changed to his explosion form and brought his left arm up in an arc. Explosives appeared in front of the arc and attached to Bakugo. Almost instantly, they detonated and sent him flying back a few yards. Copying his opponent, he kept launching barrages of explosions to keep him away. Each group of explosions sent Bakugo even further away. When the explosion weapon energy had only a quarter left, he stopped his bombardment to take a breath. This quirk is way stronger than I thought. I should train with it more to increase the amount of time I could use it, he thought. A good distance away from him, Bakugo was slowly getting up from the attack. Damn it, how the hell are you even able to fight me? You've always been under me, yet now you are almost beating me. I will never let you win, Deku. He shouted in anger as he brought his arm up. His hand moved to his grenade-designed gauntlet and pulled back the top to reveal a pin. Having a bad feeling about it, he ran a scan over it. It apparently worked like both a reservoir and grenade. It would store up sweat from Bakugo's body and release it to make a huge explosion. What worried him was how much sweat was currently in the gauntlet. Are you insane, Kaken? The amount of force that blast will make is enough to destroy this entire corridor. let alone aiming it at a person, Midoriya shouted in fear. His warnings, including the ones that All Might was giving once he too found out the nature of the attack, fell deaf to Bakugo's ear as he had a hysterical smile. "Don't worry. You'll be fine as long as you dodge," he yelled with hysteria in his voice as he pulled out the pin. A second later, a gigantic explosion plume came out from the gauntlet. The diameter was able to cover most of the corridor, leaving the sight of a blinding and scorching ball of fire barreling towards him. With nowhere to run, he did the only thing he could do. Brace for impact. He raised his arms up to cover his face. The explosion engulfed him in a sea of fire, and the last thing he felt was extreme heat and unbearable pain before everything went dark. Boom! After the blast covered Midoriya, the live feed was cut out. The force of the explosion was shaking the entire room they were in. Everyone was aghast by what they just witnessed. "Midoriya, come in, young Midoriya," All Might called into his microphone urgently. The lack of response made the mood even darker. "I can't believe he just did that," Kaminari said in disbelief. "I thought we were training to be heroes. But he took this battle way too far," Sir said. "There is no way that he survived that. A pro probably couldn't survive that blast without needing serious medical attention, let alone a teenager," Gyro pointed out. That comment made them fear for the worst. Half of the students were shocked by the move Bakugo just did, while the other half lamented over the possibility that a fellow classmate could have been seriously injured or worse. All Might was a mix of both feelings as he brought up the feed to the room Bakugo had just entered. As he walked into the smoking room, Bakugo looked over the aftermath of his powered-up explosion. There was a huge hole in the wall where the blast struck that was big enough to fit a car through. The entire room was full of both smoke and rubble from the explosion. He was glad he requested those gauntlets. They were the best things he has ever seen. "How do you like that? Thinking you can just hide your quirk from me and just start flaunting it around? You haven't and never will be better than me, and I just proved it right fucking now," he said as he smirked. The nerd was probably too injured to even move a muscle. He turned around to go find his teammate and deal with round cheeks. What he didn't expect was to see a blue cannon that was glowing yellow pointed right at him. "What the" was all he could say before he was blasted back. The shot hit him with the force of a dump truck. He flew across the room and crashed down right in front of the hole that he had made. Too dazed to even stand up, he felt something being forcefully wrapped around his arms that tied them together. "Captured," Midoriya said in triumph as he finished wrapping the capture tape around Bakugo. After letting out a sigh of relief, he dropped to his knees in exhaustion. He was lucky to be conscious after the explosion hit him. It had brought his health dangerously low to 1 bar above the critical state. Had it gone a bit lower, his body would have been put into a hibernation mode that would take a few days to wake up from. When he got up, he noticed Bakugo had walked past him and was distracted by his amazing power. Taking that chance, he snuck up behind him while charging. Once he hit him, he decided that he should capture him instead of trying to beat him. That proved successful as he had wrapped the capture tape around his arms, making him unable to continue. Unfortunately, he realized that he had to help Uraraka get the weapon and ran off before Bakugo could even start yelling. Everyone in the surveillance room were dumbstruck by what they had just saw. Midoriya had snuck up on Bakugo, hit him with a cannon shot, and captured him. What shocked them the most was seeing him move after tanking the blast. How the hell did he survive that? Minta yelled in disbelief. "He took that blast like a champ and took down his opponent. That's the manliest thing I've ever seen," Kirishima yelled with a huge grin on his face. All Might sighed in relief that his student wasn't killed by the explosion. He also announced the result of the battle. "Bakugo has been captured. He is unable to continue." When Ida and Uraraka heard the announcement, they both had different reactions. "Deku did it. He won against Bakugo," she cheered while doing a small hop. "He captured Bakugo. That means he must be heading up here right now," he exclaimed. Uraraka grinned as she knew they were guaranteed to win when Midoriya got there. She quickly charged towards Ida again to take advantage of his shock. Unfortunately, he noticed and moved the weapon to the other side of the room. Even if he is coming, there isn't enough time left for him to get here. He can't get to this room fast enough by taking the stairs. It's too late to win heroes, he states while attempting a villainous tone. It only served to make Uraraka stifle a laugh by how serious he was to acting like a villain. "Uraraka, how are things going?" Midoriya's voice spoke from the earpiece she had. "Not good. Ida has been keeping the weapon away ever since I got there." "Where is he right now?" "He's over by the windows." "Why?" she asked. "I need you to lure him to the door. Once he's there, give me a signal once the earpiece went silent. She charged towards Ida again like normal. He simply carried the weapon away and settled in front of the door. "There is no point in trying. You can't keep up with my speed," he mocked. "Now!" The moment she shouted that, the door slammed open and Midoriya flew into the room. He tackled Ida to the ground and held him there. Ida tried struggling against him, but it was proved to be futile. Without needing any more directions from her teammate, Uraraka rushes towards the weapon and touched it. "Retrieved," she said with a huge smile on her face. Uraraka has retrieved the weapon. That means the hero team wins. All Might's voice boomed from the speakers in the building. After everyone had gathered in the surveillance room, All Might began the critic. "Good job. You four performed exceptionally well for your first combat training. Now class, who was the MVP of the match?" "Obviously Midoriya," a few of the students yelled. Midoriya blushed at the praise he was receiving and Bakugo was silently fuming. After they calmed down, Yaoyorozu stepped forward to explain. Midoriya had started the training exercise with a logical plan. He was able to adapt and improvise it when Bakugo showed up unexpectedly. He kept a cool head and was able to execute some dicey moves to secure his capture of Bakugo. To top it off, he also helped his teammate retrieve the weapon in the end in a smooth and efficient way. All of these actions resulted in very little collateral damage. Bakugo seemed to be driven by a personal grudge against Midoriya that blinded his sense of logic, which led to him firing an explosion which caused significant damage to the building his team was protecting. Ida lost because he was overconfident and failed to anticipate how fast Midoriya could get to the room. While it was an attempt to play the role of a villain, you should always expect everything. Uraraka did fairly well herself as she stuck to the plan and was able to execute the new plan. Her only problem was her hesitation at the beginning. Once she was finished, almost everyone stared at her with amazed and confused expressions. Yes, I was thinking something along those lines as well, though you pointed out some additional details," All Might said. Yaoyorozu thanked him and stepped back into the group. Now, on with the next group. When they had all finished their battles, they went to the classroom to pack their things before they left for the day. Midoriya was in the infirmary for most of the battles since he had to heal his injuries. Surprisingly, Recovery Girl's Quirk worked on him. He also found that any injury he gets in his megaform transfers over to his actual body, proven when he saw burn marks littering his body. When he got back to the classroom, some of the students walked over to him. "Hey, Midoriya, that was some awesome fighting you did back there," Kirishima heartily said while clapping him in the back. "By the way, my name is Ijiro Kirishima. My name is Hanta Siro. I'm shocked you were able to beat Bakugo. He's super strong," Siro said with a grin. "I'm Mina Ashido, and I just want to say that your quirk is amazing." Ashido gushed as she was bouncing around. One by one, each of the students introduced themselves to him, often complimenting his battle. After he embarrassingly thanked them, they all walked out and headed back home to prepare for their next day. Of all the things he expected to see before he entered the school, a huge mob of reporters was not one of them. Midoriya had just got there to witness the madness that was the media. All of them would practically pounce on any student they saw and ask them the same exact question. "How would you describe your experience with All Might as a teacher?" The desperate looks on their faces was quite obvious. You could literally see the hunger in their eyes for any info they can get. He had tried sneaking around them by sticking close to the wall. By not making that much sudden movement, no one had glanced in his direction yet. He had almost reached the gate, but he was spotted by a female reporter. "You, tell us about All Might." In an instant, he was surrounded on all sides by people with microphones and cameras. He started to sweat nervously at all the attention directed towards him. All Might is a good teacher. He, points out things that are useful for being a pro hero. That's all I've got," he said as he tried to back away from the mob. From the corners of his eye, he saw Uraraka and Ida also being hounded on. Uraraka was doing some sort of flexing pose that didn't make sense and Ida seemed to be giving a full-out explanation and lecture. Both of them were able to get away since the reporters got bored of them. They entered the gates and sighed in relief from escaping. Midoriya tried to go towards them, but the mob blocked his escape and kept asking questions. "Can you let me go? I need to get to class," he asked. As he expected, they completely ignored him. He also noticed that the mob seemed to be slowly moving away from the gate, pushing him along with them. "Look, it's one of the teachers," one of the reporters called out. They all turned in the direction that he was pointing to see Mr. Aizawa casually walking. Taking that chance, Midoriya slipped through the distracted mob and bolted towards the gate. He got through and slowed his pace to a jog as he mentally thanked his teacher. Before he walked in the building, he swore he heard something metallic slam shut. When he got to class, he sat down in his seat and waited. The rest of the class were talking with each other and making jokes about what happened outside. A minute later, Aizawa came in and silenced all of them. I saw the footage of the combat training from yesterday. You all did okay in terms of how you handled it. He then turned to Bakugo. Bakugo, you have lots of potential. Don't waste it by acting like a kid. He just grunted in response. Now, we have to do a homeroom activity to do. Sorry for bringing you up late, but you have to, he started to say. Is it going to be another special test? The class thought worryingly. Pick a class representative, he finished. The entire class sighed in relief, and then mayhem ensued. I want be class rep. No, I want to do it. I'll take it. You probably need me to do it. Only someone as dazzling as me can be it. I want to be the leader. I will make all the girls' skirts be 30 centimeters above the knee. Let me do it. Almost everyone was stating that they want to be class rep. The situation would make any government teacher both laugh and feel disappointed. Silence, please. They all stopped shouting and turned their heads towards the voice. It turned out to be Ida who shouted. The role of leading the class carries great responsibility. It can't be decided just by whoever wants to do it. That person has to be trustworthy. If we want to make this a democracy, we should hold an election. The ironic thing was that he was raising his hand the highest. But we've only known each other for a small amount of time. We can't easily know who is the best candidate. Besides, won't everyone just vote for themselves? Asui argued. That is exactly why whoever receives multiple votes is the most trusted candidate. Don't you agree, Mr. Aizawa? He asked. Aizawa replied that he didn't care as long as they finished. After the ballots were cast and drawn, the results were in. Most of the students had 1 vote, proving the claim Asui made. Yaoyorozu had 2 votes. The person with 3 votes was. I got 3? Midoriya exclaimed. Bakugo immediately slammed his hands in his desk and demanded for who those 3 votes were. While Shiro made a snarky comment, Uraraka was nervously whistling while looking the other way. After that scene calmed down, Midoriya was named class rep and Yaoyorozu was named deputy rep. She was perfectly calm about it while he was a shaking mess. When lunch came, Midoriya was eating his lunch with Uraraka and Ida. They were relieved to have a break from the classes, except Midoriya. He was picking at his food, even though that food was one of his favorites. I don't know if I'm qualified to be class rep, he said after a few moments of silence. Yes, you are. Your judgment skills and determination make you an excellent person to lead the class. Well, that's the reason I voted for you, Ida said. What? But I thought you wanted to be class rep. You have the glasses and everything, Uraraka asked. Does she just say anything that's on her mind? Midoriya thought in shock. Ida shook his head in disagreement. There's a difference between wanting the position and being qualified for it. That's what I rationalized to be correct. Rationalized? The way you talk. Are you a rich boy? Uraraka suddenly asked. Ida had a look of shock momentarily. It then changed to one that was full of pride. Well, I knew I wouldn't be able to hide it for long. You are right. My family has been full of pro heroes for generations. Do any of you know the turbo hero, Ingenium? Instantly, Midoriya went full on nerd mode. Of course. He's a famous pro hero with 65 sidekicks, working alongside him at his Tokyo agency. Wait, don't tell me. Yes, he's my older brother. Ingenium is a hero who honors the hero code and helps everyone. My biggest reason of becoming a hero is to be just like him. Ida's face was full of determination and inspiration. It was a comforting thing to see someone strive to be like someone they look up to. Ring. Warning. There has been a level 3 security breach. Please evacuate in a calm, orderly fashion. The moment after the alarm went off, all hell broke loose. Everyone was scrambling to get away. The screaming quickly turned into a deafening chorus. Level 3? What does that mean? Ida asked. It means that someone has broken into the school. That hasn't happened in years. One of the upperclassmen answered before joining the panicking crowd. Midoriya, Uraraka, and Ida got up and tried to evacuate and calm down the students. Nothing they did made a difference as everybody was trying to escape with their lives, which was ironically what the announcement told them not to do. Midoriya and Uraraka were stuck in the middle of the sea of students, while Ida was shoved against the window. He looked out to see what was happening. To his surprise, it turned out that it was only the media that had broken in. Aizawa and Present Mike were at the front trying to convince them to leave. Everyone, there is no need to panic, he tried to yell. But it was overwhelmed by the yelling and shouting from the other students. No one knew the actual situation that was happening. Ida started thinking of ways to get everyone's attention when he noticed Uraraka was close by. A plan quickly formed in his head, and he tried moving through the crowd to reach her. Uraraka, make me float. He reached out his hand as close as he could get. After a look of confusion on her face, she touched his hand with the tips of her fingers. Instantly, he felt his weight go away and began to float above the crowd. Pulling up his pant legs, he activated his engine quirk to propel himself. It did, but the position of his engines made him spin crazily as he flew toward the emergency exit door. He hit the wall above the door, grabbed the pipe on the ceiling, and faced the crowd. Everyone, calm down. Everyone stopped and looked up to see one of the students perched above the door, posing like the icon on the emergency exit. There is no threat. It is just the media. We are students at UA. We should act in a way that honors this school. Almost immediately, all the students stopped panicking and made their way back to whatever they were doing before the alarm. When they got to class, Midoriya made a surprise announcement. He that nominated Ida should take his place as class rep instead. He said that he was more fitted to do it, as he was able to handle the panicking students and calm them down. Ida graciously accepted the offer, and most of the class supported that decision. After that, Aizawa instructed them on what they will be doing next. Class, you'll be doing rescue training today. That includes earthquakes, floods, and everything in between, he said, while holding a flashcard that had the word rescue printed in it. Rescue. Sounds like a lot of work, Kaminari said, with an uneasy expression. Dude, this is the main part about being a hero. The point of being a hero is to rescue people, Kirishima said. While the class discussed, Aizawa continued. We'll be holding this training in an off-campus facility, so we'll be taking a bus. Myself, All Might, and another faculty member will be in charge. Last thing, you all may choose whether to wear your hero costumes or not. They may limit your performance while training, so choose wisely. He finished as he pressed the button that opened the racks. He told them to get ready and then left. As everyone got in the bus, they sat down randomly by anyone. Ida was silently cursing how because it wasn't a standard school bus. His seating arrangement plan was utterly useless. Midoriya was sitting on the same side as Asui, Kirishima, and a muscular guy named Sato. Hey Midoriya, you should know that say whatever is in my mind, Asui suddenly said. What's up, Asui? Call me Tsu. Your quirk. Those two forms you have remind me of Bakugo's and Ida's quirk, she stated. Some of the other students turned towards Midoriya, hoping for some answer to his strange and powerful quirk. To their surprise, he smiled in response. I'm not surprised that you made that connection. In fact, those forms are actually their quirks, he replied. All the students were both surprised and confused by his answer, especially Ada. What do you mean by their quirks? Yaoyorozu asked. It's simple. One of the many abilities that my quirk gives is the ability to copy and replicate almost any quirk, he explained. What? You can copy quirks? How? Kaminari asked in shock. Well, I found out that there is 3 criteria that must be met to copy a quirk. First, it must be a quirk that I can copy. Quirks like Ojiro and Hagakure are some that cannot be copied. Second, I must make physical contact with someone for 10 seconds. It doesn't matter what they wear, as long as I touch them. Third, they must be in a subdued mood. It can be anything from being happy, sad, or neutral. As long as they aren't angry or suspicious, it will work. That reminds me, sorry for copying your quirk without asking, Ida, he explained while bowing as an apology. Everyone stared at him in complete awe. They thought his quirk was strong before. Now, they realized that it's too overpowered. Really? Try it in me, Ashido exclaimed as she stuck her hand out. Midoriya grabbed it and waited. All the students were focusing on what will happen next. 10 seconds later, he let go and began to change. His bodysuit changed from blue to purple. The armor pieces changed to a lime green color. His helmet changed to look like a lime green transparent water drop with what looked like a water mask over his mouth. His Mega Buster now looked like a nozzle. Holy crap! Some of the guys shouted as all of them watched in amazement. Midoriya took out a clump of loose fabric from the seat cushion he was sitting in. Tossing it in the air, he shot green acid that instantly melted fabric. So, any more questions? The second afterwards, practically all of the class were in front of Midoriya, asking him to copy their quirks and show them what it does. He then spent the next 5 minutes copying and trying out his new quirks. Kaminari's form had a black and yellow design with his cannon, looking like a plug that could discharge electricity. Gyro's form had a purple design with headphones on his helmet, and a cannon that looked like a speaker that shot out sound waves. Kirishima's was a light red design that allowed him to harden certain parts of his body, which turned a vibrant red in said area. Yaoyorozu's was a red and yellow design with his cannon, looking like pot that could pop out any non-organic object, though it took up a lot of its weapon energy. Todoroki's was the most interesting as it had a design that was white in his right and red on his left. There was also 2 cannons, an ice gun on his right arm and a flamethrower on his left arm. One way or another, he copied the quirks of almost all of his classmates. Midoriya. There has to be some limit to that power. You can't just be an all-powerful person with no drawbacks, Zero said. There is a drawback. For each quirk, there is an energy bar. Each time I use that quirk, the energy level will go down. Once it hits empty, I can't use that quirk until I recharge, he explained. You're so lucky to have an amazing quirk like that. It's quite flashy and noticeable. My hardening is strong, but it doesn't look that cool, Kirishima said. No, your quirk is amazing and has lots of potential, Midoriya argued back. The boy with the sparkly costume, Aoyama, said that his naval laser was already pro level, though Ashido ruined his moment by saying how it would always give him a stomach ache. Before they could continue their conversation, Aizawa announced that they have arrived. Once they got off the bus, they all marveled at the huge building in front of them. It bigger than the entire lunchroom. A person wearing what looked like a space suit walked to them. Midoriya and Uraraka immediately recognized the hero. It's the space hero, 13. They both squealed in excitement. He's a rescue specialist that has already saved hundreds of people. Okay students, follow me inside. 13 started walking to the entrance with Aizawa, and the students following behind him. Once they entered, the sight they saw was amazing. They were on a platform that was higher than the main area of the dome, which had a huge flight of stairs to get down there. Scattered around the area were different environments and situations, ranging from a shipwreck, landslide, a fire, and others. I built this facility to help train and prepare students for different types of disasters and accidents. I call it the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, or USJ for short, 13 stated. Hey 13, where's All Might? He's supposed to meet us here, Aizawa asked with annoyance clear in his voice. 13 then leaned over and whispered while holding up 3 fingers. It seems that he did too much hero work this morning and ran out of time. I swear, that man is the embodiment of irrationality, Aizawa grumbled with even more annoyance. Well, let's get on with the training. It won't affect how the students will perform. Turning back to the class, 13 made one last speech. There is 1, no 2 or 3, just a few more things I'd like to mention. You know how my quirk, black hole, works? I can suck up any form of matter and turn it into dust. While that is useful for helping from disasters, it can also easily kill someone. That goes for a lot of your quirks. In this society, quirks are highly regulated and restricted by the government. Even so, there are quirks that can end someone's life with one wrong step. You learn different ways to use your quirks with Aizawa's test. You experience the danger and responsibility of using them against people with All Might's combat trials. This training exercise will teach you how to use quirks to help and rescue people. Remember, the powers you have aren't meant to harm others. I hope you learn to use them to save people. Thank you for listening. The entire class immediately gave him a standing ovation. He's right. The main purpose of his device is to help people and save them from disasters, Midoriya thought while looking at his left arm. Danger. Quirk activation detected ahead. As Midoriya looked ahead to see what his MP meant, Aizawa felt a chill run down his spine and turned around. They both looked to see the fountain in the middle of the area stopped working. Then, the space in front of it distorted, and a large amount of purple mist came out of nowhere. It formed a circle in mid-air and a hand reached out of the portal. The hand belonged to a man with hands all over his body. On his arms, chest, neck, and face were gray dismembered hands that grabbed onto him. As he stepped out, more people came out of the portal. Each of them had an intimidating aura to them, with scary appearances to match. Everyone, stay back. Protect the student. 13. Aizawa shouted once he got his bearings. Midoriya snapped out of the trance he was in and began to step back. It was only then that the rest noticed the crowd of people coming out. Who are they? Is this a part of our training? Kirishima asked as he took a step forward, only for Aizawa to yell at him to stay away. As he put in his goggles, both he and Midoriya said one sentence. Those are actual villains. As the last villain, a huge and extremely muscular man with a bird head and exposed brain stepped out from the portal. The class started to get scared once they realized that this situation was real as day. The man with hands on him looked around the area and spoke. What? He isn't here? After all that planning we did, it gets messed up by a no-show. Well, maybe a couple of dead kids will convince him to come. The creepy smile he gave sent chill down all their spines. They knew that this was going to get ugly quick. Aizawa had just grabbed a hold of his scarf and was about to fight when Midoriya called him. Mr. Aizawa, it's too dangerous for you to face all of them. Your fighting style is mainly focused on taking down single opponents with surprise attacks, not an entire group. Aizawa just gave a smirk in response. Kid, you can't be a pro if you only have one trick. With that, he jumped down from the stairs towards the horde of enemies. A few of the villains with long-range quirks took position and were aiming to fire at the pro hero. Once he was close, they activated their quirks. Except, nothing happened. What the hell? One of them asked as he tried to use his quirk to no avail. As he tried, a scarf wrapped around his torso, and he was kicked right in the gut by the person they were trying to hit. Pulling back the scarf, Aizawa lassoed other nearby villains and slammed them on the ground with extreme force. While no one could see it due to the gold goggles, his eyes were glowing a bright red, indicating the use of his erasure quirk. Oh crap, it's Eraserhead. He can nullify any of our quirks by just looking at us. One of them exclaimed after recognizing him. Almost immediately afterwards, Aizawa flew in and delivered a flying kick to the head, knocking the guy out. Then, one of the villains that had 4 arms made of stone came charging at him with a cocky expression. Try erasing my quirk, he yelled while throwing a punch. It was easily dodged, and a strong punch returned that hit him right in the face, sending the man flying into a group of villains. With that, the completely one-sided onslaught continued with Aizawa taking out lots of them by the masses. As the students watched their teacher taking down multiple villains left and right, 13 urged them to run toward the exit. When they finally did, they only got halfway to the door when the man made of purple mist appeared and cut off their route. Hello, students of UA. Sorry for coming here without permission, but there is important business we must complete. We are the League of Villains, and our ultimate goal is to end the life of the symbol of peace, All Might, the man said in a professional tone. What? They plan to kill All Might? Midoriya thought with a shocked expression. Even so, it appears that he isn't here. Our sources tell us that he should be one of the teachers that are supervising here. Was there a change of schedule or something else? The man asked. Stay back, everyone, 13 shouted as he raised up one finger to use his quirk. Before he could, Bakugo and Kirishima jumped ahead of him and hit the mist villain with a hardened punch and explosion. The attack caused a huge smoke screen that covered everyone. Ha! You think we're just going to stand around and let you tear this place apart? Kirishima asked with a confident expression. When the smoke cleared up, they saw that the villain was hardly hurt at all. All it did was remove some of the mist that was covering him, revealing a metal armor on the neck and some clothes. Impressive. Even though you are just students, it's quite obvious that you are very talented. Enough so that you could already be pros, the mist villain said. 13 yelled for the boys to back away as he popped open one of his fingers. Before he even got the chance, the villain scattered his mist so that it covered the entire group. Now, I will scatter you across this entire facility so you can meet my comrades and your deaths. In an instant, almost all of them were sucked into portals that teleported them to different disaster zones. When Midoriya came out of his portal, he found that he was quite high in the air. Gravity took place, and he began to fall. Below him, the area seemed to be a rocky terrain with small mountains surrounding the place. Before he landed, he turned so that his feet would hit the ground first. When he did, the impact caused him to feel a small jarring sensation in his legs. He mentally thanked that his suit had shock absorbers in the soles or else his legs would have been broken. Midoriya, you okay? Turning around, he saw that Kaminari, Gyro, and Yaoyorozu were running towards him. Yeah, the fall wasn't the worst thing I've felt, he said with a small chuckle. That's great. But we are in a dangerous situation, Yaoyorozu said, while pulling out a metal staff. Once she said that, Midoriya then noticed the large number of villains that were surrounding them. They were moving slowly towards them, each with scary grins in their faces. This is going to be good. 2 hot babes ready for picking. Once we kill those boys, then we can start having fun, one of them said, while licking his lips. So, what should we do? Gyro asked with an uneasy expression after hearing that. Yaoyorozu got into a fighting stance. Kaminari started backing away, and Midoriya aimed his Mega Buster. Simple, Take them down, Midoriya said before quickly changing into his ear jack form and blasting a huge sound wave towards the villains. They covered their ears pain as they were pushed away by the force of the waves. Quickly, the two girls began their attacks as well. Yaoyorozu charged towards the group and began spinning her staff, striking lots of them in the heads. Any villain that came near them received either a blow to the head or a stab to the chest. Gyro plugged her ear jacks into the speaker in her legs and fired her own sound waves that knocked down some of them. Hey Midoriya, sound waves are my quirk. Try using one that isn't mine. Gyro shouted as she blasted away two villains that came at her. Have it your way, he shouted back as he dodged a punch aimed for his head. Changing into his engine form, he boosted and delivered a hard knee attack to the gut. That sent the villain flying back a few meters. Noticing something from his peripheral, he then boosted over to Yaoyorozu and landed a flying kick on a villain that was sneaking behind her. Thanks, she called as he jumped away and rammed into a group. He barreled right through them and toppled them like they were bowling pins. When he stopped, a loud bang and a flash of light came from behind him. Turning around, it seemed like Yaoyorozu had thrown a flash grenade as she was wearing black goggles, and the villains in front of her were covering their eyes. A small group of villains tried running towards him, to which he then changed to his explosion form and threw explosives towards the ground. When they detonated, it kicked up a big veil of dust. I can't see a thing," one of them yelled as they tried rubbing the dirt that got in their eyes. While doing that, one of them felt something wrapped tightly around his torso. Before he could look down, he was roughly yanked into the air and then slammed down into his own group. The dust cleared up to show Midoriya in a form that was white and orange. His cannon has changed to resemble a dispenser. From the cannon was a long and thin strip of tape, which was what had been wrapped around the villain. Swinging it around, Midoriya threw the man around like a flail. "Geez, dude, no mercy," Gyro commented as she watched him release the man and sent him flying away over the mountain tops. "Sorry, I really wanted to try out Zero's form, and the technique was from what Mr. Aizawa did in Duck," he suddenly shouted as he changed to his normal form and fired 2 regular shots. Gyro quickly ducked to avoid the attack, which had hit a person trying to sneak up and grab her. The shots both hit him in the face and left him dazed. Midoriya then jumped over Gyro and tackled the man down, using his tape form to tie the arms together. "Thanks for the save," she said. "No problem, though it seems like someone might need it more," he replied while pointing. She turned to see Kaminari running away from a few villains chasing him, screaming similarly to a little girl. Gyro immediately stifled a laugh that was noticed. "Is it really necessary to laugh at your friend being chased by people who want to hurt and kill him?" Midoriya asked with an accusing expression. Yes it is," she replied before letting out a full-on fit of giggles. "Not funny, guys," Kaminari yelled as he barely dodged a stab from a knife. Sighing in disappointment, Midoriya then started to charge and aim his cannon. After a few seconds, he fired a level 2 shot at the villains chasing his friend. The blast took out all of them at once. "Thanks, man, I owe you one. I wish that I could help out, but my quirk isn't good for fighting with friends," he panted while leaning on Midoriya's shoulder for support. "Well, tell me how your quirk works, and then we can think of a way for you to use it here," Midoriya asked, while getting his cannon ready to fire at anyone that got too close. "My quirk is electrification. It allows me to cover my entire body with electricity. I can release and discharge it to the surrounding area, but I can't control what direction it goes in. It would just shock you guys as well," he explained. "Wait, you can cover yourself in electricity? I think I got an idea," Gyro suddenly said. "Really?" Kaminari and Midoriya waited to hear what her plan was. She gave a mischievous grin in response. "I have a bad feeling about what she's going to do," Midoriya thought worryingly. Suddenly, she did something that no one anticipated. She lifted her foot and kicked Kaminari towards a villain that was coming towards them. Once he bumped into him, Kaminari instinctually used his quirk and covers his body in electricity, electrocuting the man. "Gyro, you can't just kick your teammate towards an enemy," Midoriya exclaimed with a shocked expression. "So, it worked, didn't it?" Her smirk only grew larger. Back with Kaminari, his face had changed to a confident smirk once he realized that he was doing damage. "Whoa, this is what I'm talking about. Don't worry, guys, you can leave it to me," he said as he ran towards another villain and electrocuted them as well. Midoriya just sighed and continued fighting the villains. With the addition of Kaminari to their attacking, they were taking down villains even faster than they already were. By then, unconscious villains were scattered around the entire area. Though, more would always come from nowhere. It was like the zone had an infinite amount of them. Soon, their stamina was running out. Yaoyorozu and Gyro had used their quirks so much that they were too tired to move. Kaminari was releasing weaker bolts of electricity, and Midoriya was almost out of energy to keep up with the high pace of fighting. Damn, is there no end to these villains? Gyro asked in exasperation. Midoriya was trying to keep his cannon up to fire at any moment. Yaoyorozu was crouching in the floor with what looked like pain or concentration. Suddenly, she opened her eyes and spoke. Okay, it's finished. A moment after she said that, her back glowed pink, and a huge blanket popped out and covered them. What, you think a blankie is going to protect you? One of the villains asked mockingly. Feeling the blanket, Midoriya noticed that the material was thicker than that of a normal fabric. You are looking at a sheet of insulation 100 millimeters thick. You're up, Kaminari, Yaoyorozu proudly said before closing the opening by holding it down from the inside. Kaminari smirked once he realized what she meant. Thanks, now I don't have to worry about frying my friends. He then discharged a large voltage of electricity that spread around. It electrocuted all the villains nearby, knocking them all out. The attack left burn marks littered across the empty ground. The three students slightly lifted the blanket to see the aftermath of the attack. Midoriya sighed in relief when he saw that all of the villains were taken out. That's a relief, he said while turning towards his friends. He didn't even get the chance to look at both of them before Gyro jumped in front of him yelling, "Don't look!" Gah, what the heck? He yelled as she put her hands in front of his eyes. What are you so worked up about? Yaoyorozu, cover yourself up, Gyro shouted while looking towards her friend, whose entire upper body was exposed. It didn't take long for Midoriya to realize what was happening, as he immediately blushed a deep shade of red while turning around. Yaoyorozu quickly remade the top of her outfit so that she was covered up. Her face was slightly red in embarrassment. Oh okay, it's safe to go out, she said with a small stutter. Gyro removed her hand from Midoriya's face, and they all took off the insulated blanket. Looking around, they saw that the entire ground had minor scorch marks everywhere with little wisps of smoke floating around. All the villains were unconscious, albeit doing a small twitch here and there. Midoriya whistled in impressed by the power of Kaminari's quirk. Wow, you did great at finishing off the rest of them. Nice job, man, he said while turning to where Kaminari was standing. He expected to see him grinning in pride and bragging on how he had saved them. What he didn't expect was to find Kaminari walking around with a weird expression on his face. He had a wavy smile with eyes that were simple white circles with a black dot. His hands were making a thumbs up and his arms occasionally moved back and forth. The weirdest thing was that he was only making one sound. Wai. Midoriya walked in front of him and waved his hand right up to his face. There was no reaction whatsoever. He and Yaoyorozu had a confused expression while Gyro was on the ground, laughing her head off. This might be a drawback for his quirk, he said with an uneasy tone. Yeah, one of us may need to help him. It doesn't look like he can do simple tasks alone, Yaoyorozu said. Now we need to plan our next move. Now that all the villains here are out of commission, we can safely get out of this zone without any more ambushes. Hold up, let me check first, Midoriya said before scanning the area. He searched around the part of the zone that led out to the main area, as that was the most likely place for an ambush to happen. Fortunately, no heat signatures were detected in that area. He was about to give the green light when he remembered what happened at the entrance exam. He had failed to notice Uraraka since he only checked a specific area and not everywhere. Not making the same mistake again, he stared to scan the entire area. It was lucky that he did that, because there was a person that was hiding under the ground. The person was close enough to the surface so that they could easily get out. As it was, Kaminari was standing in front of the spot. Midoriya then raised his cannon and started to charge up. What are you doing? Yaoyorozu asked in confusion. Putting one finger to his mouth to signal her to stay quiet, he aimed at the spot and fired a level 2 shot. When it hit its target, the ground around it exploded, and the villain was blasted out. He had some form of skull mask that covered his face. He landed a few meters away, unconscious. What the hell? Yaoyorozu and Gyro shouted once they saw the villain. I saw him hiding under the ground. He probably was going to attack when we let our guards down. Now we can move out, he explained. Yet again, thank you for the save. With that, the group descended down the mountain after a few minutes of rest. Midoriya was carrying Kaminari on his back, since he was the only one who had enough energy to do it. Even so, he still was moving at a faster pace than the girls. Midoriya, can't you slow down? Gyro shouted from behind him. There isn't time to slow down. Villains are attacking our friends, and we need to help them as soon as possible, he argued back. She groaned in response, while Yaoyorozu chuckled in an exhausted voice. Ugh, damn you, Kaminari. While we have to walk on our own, you get to be carried. I wish I could get a lift as well, she groaned. How about you guys use me as support? Midoriya suggested. The girls agreed and put one of their arms around his shoulders to help them. While it did make the walk faster, the close proximity to the girls was making him very flustered. Are you all right? Your face is red? Yaoyorozu asked when she noticed his blushing face. It's nothing, really. Let's focus on getting out, he quickly answered. At the pace they went, they were able to get out of the mountain zone in 3 minutes. Once they got close to the main plaza, Midoriya set down his 3 passengers. After a few seconds of freaking out by how close the girls were to him, he and the others started to plan out. So, what should we do next? Gyro asked. We should probably avoid the plaza since that's where Mr. Aizawa is fighting most of the villains. Going there would most likely end up with us fighting, Yaoyorozu explained. But shouldn't we try helping him? We don't have to directly enter the fight, but we should do what we can to help, Midoriya suggested. The other 2 pondered on the thought for a few seconds. While it would be dangerous to go there, it would provide the chance to help their teacher take out the remaining villains. I'm all in for doing that, Gyro suddenly said. Yeah, we're heroes in training. If we can't handle a little danger, then there wouldn't be a point in enrolling into this school, Yaoyorozu said with a smirk on her face. Kaminari kept giving a thumbs up and making that incoherent sound. When they all agreed to the plan, they quietly snuck closer to the main plaza. Once close enough, they got into the water that bordered the area. It provided a great cover as their only heads stuck up from surface level. As they observed, they saw multitudes of villains were lying unconscious on the ground. Damn, Mr. Aizawa did that all by himself? Not even all of us together would be able to handle that many villains, Gyro whispered in awe. While he did agree, Midoriya was also looking around for the 3 villains that seemed to be the most dangerous. The guy with hands on his body was standing still, faintly chuckling to himself. The mist villain that warped them was not there, probably in another one of the zones. The bird monster was nowhere to be seen as well, which was a bit worrying. The thing was almost as muscular as All Might is. It could mean that it has some form of super strength. He hoped none of his classmates were fighting it. Ag. A pained scream echoed from his right, which sent chills running down all 4 of their spines. Turning his head in that direction, his stomach dropped as he had just found the bird monster. It was holding down Aizawa, with one hand on his arm and the other in his head. Aizawa's arm was bent at an unnatural angle with exposed flesh showing in his elbow. His head was being shoved into the ground hard enough to make a small crater. Blood was pouring freely down his face. There was already enough blood around him to form a big puddle of it. Had it not been for the fear that all of them were feeling, they would have thrown up from seeing that. What the hell is that? Gyro whispered. I don't know. Whatever it is, we need to avoid at all costs, Yaoyorozu said with a scared look. Midoriya was about to argue that they couldn't leave their teacher, but even he knew that it would be pointless. If that thing could take down a pro hero, they wouldn't stand a chance against it. Maybe if they distracted it long enough to get him out of there, but they didn't know how fast it was. As he thought that, the hand villain began to speak. What do you think of my pet, Eraserhead? It's the bioengineered anti-symbol of peace, Namu. It was made to take down All Might himself, so don't be too sad that it beat you that easily, he said while monologuing. Wait, it was made to beat All Might. That explains what they meant by having plans to kill him, Midoriya thought. It also guaranteed none of them stood any chance against it, as it was made specifically to take down the number 1 hero. Wait, made. How do you make a living weapon strong enough to overpower a hero? After the Namu slammed Aizawa's head in the ground again, black mist materialized next to the hand villain. The mist villain appeared and the 2 began to discuss. So Kurogiri, did you kill 13 and the kids? The hand villain asked. Sorry Shigaraki, 13 is only incapacitated and injured. As for the students, they managed to overwhelm me, and 1 was able to get to escape, Kurogiri apologized. Upon hearing that, Shigaraki started to scratch his neck. At first, it seemed like a normal itch. Then, it gradually got faster and tougher till the point that he almost drew blood. Damn it, Kurogiri. If you weren't our escape route, I would use my quirk to disintegrate you to dust. Shigaraki screamed with extreme annoyance in his tone as the itching hit faster. His hands then stopped and lowered in defeat. Well, that's it for this plan. With the pros coming, this mission has gone up in smoke. Game over, back to the starting screen. And I was really excited in finishing this today. Wait, Does that mean they're leaving? Yaoyorozu asked quietly. Hell yeah, we get to live. Gyro cheered as silently as she could. Midoriya was happy as well since this trouble would finally be over. It would be bad though since they were getting away, and they might try something else. Though, that's what confused him the most. Obviously, Yua will buff up their security after this is over. The villains won't get another chance that easily, and they are just running away. He continued to observe them so see if they were going to retreat. They weren't making any moves at the moment, so that could either be good or bad. Maybe we are safe, he thought to himself. Then, he saw something that made all the blood in his body run ice cold. The hand villain, Shigaraki, was looking at them. Worse of all, he had a smile that made every instinct in his body scream for him to run away. Let's leave All Might some souvenirs, shall we? He said maliciously. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, he appeared right in front of them. His hands were inches away from Yaoyorozu's and Gyro's face. Midoriya had barely turned his eyes to react. Normally, one would think he was using a normal physical attack. But his threat to his comrade held some frightening information. He said that he would use his quirk to disintegrate him. Along that as well was how the skin on their teacher's elbows seemed to be decayed. If Midoriya's hunch was correct, then his two friends would be killed the moment the hands touched their faces. He had to do something to save them. Immediately changing to his engine form, he used max thrust to grab Kaminari with one hand and tackle both of the girls out of the way right before the hands made contact with the other. Gah! Gyro yelled as she was suddenly being shoved in the water by something slamming into her. She had no idea what had just happened since it went by too quickly. Yaoyorozu was in the same situation. Midoriya ignored their reactions and swiveled around to face the villain, who was turning to look at him. Not letting him get another chance, he changed to his explosion form and sent an arc of explosives towards the villain. They detonated right in his face and caused big explosion, followed with a veil of smoke. Slowly putting his arm down, he waited to see for any signs of movement. Once the smoke cleared, his jaw dropped. Instead of the hand villain being taken out by the blast, the Namu that was holding down Aizawa had now just blocked the blast. Faster than the eye could see, it ran at absurd speeds from his prey to in front of his master. Now that his speed was confirmed, almost all hope of even distracting it was utterly destroyed. Well, those were some interesting powers. They are just like power-ups in games, where using one gives you a special ability, Shigaraki said with mild interest. While I would love to learn more about you, you made me mad by trying to blow me up. Namu, deal with him. Immediately after the command was given, Namu practically warped in front of Midoriya and grabbed his arm. Oh no, he thought before he was thrown into the air. At the height he was at, he could see the entire interior of the Usji. It would have been pleasant had it not been for the fact that he would soon be crash landing. True to his statement, gravity did its job, and he plummeted down to the ground. When he landed head first, he saw black dots appear for a bit, and everything felt disoriented. It took a second for it to go away. Getting back up, he turned back to the area that he was just thrown from. It was shocking to see how far he was actually thrown. Yaoyorozu, Gyro, and Kaminari with Mr. Aizawa had gotten away from the hand villain, even though he was only focused on him. Though, he did notice that the Namu was not among the group there. That would most likely mean extreme danger behind you. The MP unit practically blared in his head to emphasize the warning. Leaping forward, he barely missed the hammer slam that was aimed at him. While it didn't hit him directly, the air pressure alone was able to send him rolling a few meters away. Once he stopped, he looked up to see the damage it had done. The ground beneath it was completely shattered and destroyed. Had he been hit, there probably wouldn't even be a body to bury. The Namu then brought its arms back and prepared for another attack. Crap. What do I do? I can barely dodge its attacks, and it's too strong for me to survive an attack. The only chance I have to wear it down, Midoriya thought quickly to himself. Changing into his electrification form, he fired a bolt of electricity that struck the Namu in the chest. The attack did way less than it should have. It had damaged the beast by a small proportion. The only way you could tell was by the very small scorch marks on where it was hit. But if it's able to put a mark on it, a full-out discharge could take the thing down. It should have. But there was small factor that made it pointless. The scorch marks that were made quickly disappeared, and it looked like it hadn't even been hurt in the first place. There's no use in trying to fight my Namu. With its shock absorption and regeneration quirks, it's impossible for you to win, Shigaraki laughed mockingly. Midoriya glanced over at him. What he had just said something that confused him. Unfortunately, it was a bad move. The Namu has appeared in front of him and threw a punch at his face. It barely missed by a small distance as Midoriya crouched quickly to avoid the devastating attack. The passing fist was just a few centimeters above him, ignoring the buffeting winds that were behind him. He changed to his engine form and boosted past it from underneath. Once he got a reasonable distance away, he changed back to his normal form and started charging up. His body was ready to drop everything and dodge the second the Namu makes any moves. Instead, it was just starting back with lifeless eyes that honestly creeped the living shit out of him. Miraculously, the charging was finished without any interference whatsoever. Taking aim, he fired the level 2 shot. The blast hit the Namu directly in the chest, and it did practically nothing. The attack that was capable of tearing down metal and knocking out people with a one hit did hardly any damage to it at all. The only thing it did was make a small indentation, which quickly healed. It didn't even look phased in the slightest. You have got to be kidding me. It tanked one of my strongest attacks like it was nothing, Midoriya thought in shock. How sad. Nothing you do is enough to stop my Namu, Shigaraki said with a creepy gleeful expression. I think I'm done playing around with you. Finish him. Before anything else could happen, Midoriya changed back to his engine form and boosted backwards. It was good that he did, as the moment afterward, the spot he was just at was completely obliterated by a downward punch. He realized that fighting the Namu was pointless, as it was just too strong. If he could distract it long enough so it doesn't attack his classmates, the pros would show up. He quickly spun his legs to the side and shot off to the right. The abrupt change in direction would hopefully make it harder for the Namu to catch him. True to his assumptions, the creature always missed as it wasn't able to turn quickly enough to keep up. Unfortunately, the engine weapon energy was nearly depleted. A few more seconds of sustained movement or one big burst would empty the last of his reserves. Deciding the latter, he released one last burst of speed to rocket into the air at a 45-degree angle. It caused him to fly a reasonable distance, so that he was higher than the entrance platform. Now was his only chance at focusing on strategizing. Now that he couldn't use his engine form for now, he needed to find a form that gave him mobility and speed. The only quirks he could think of were Kakens and Zeros. The explosion form was probably the most reliable, as it made its own forward motion. Right before he could change, the Namu appeared right in front of him, rearing back its fist to deliver a crippling blow. Crap. No time to dodge, Midoriya thought as he changed to a different form. It was Kirishima's hardening quirk, which he picked up from the bus ride. Basic light red design with what looked like 2 gears attached to the shoulders. The form allowed him to increase defense on certain parts of his body, turning a vibrant shad when using the utmost limit of the power to harden his entire body in hopes of surviving the attack. When the fist connected, it was nothing but excruciating pain. The punch itself felt like he was hit by a freight train going at Mach speed. He could literally feel his suit cracking and breaking apart. Lastly, the force of the punch sent him flying away towards the entrance. He crash-landed and caused a huge crater to form around him. All he felt was pain around his entire body. His vision had blacked out completely, yet he was able to remain conscious. Deku, Midoriya. A few voices screamed that seemed to be close by. After a couple of seconds, he was able to open his eyes partly. In front of him were Uraraka, Yaoyorozu, Gyro, Kaminari, and some of his classmates. All had a fearful expression on their faces. "GG guys," he whispered weakly. "Thank God you're alive. What the hell did that thing do to you?" Gyro asked after a sigh of relief. "Ugh. I tried distracting it for as long as I could until help showed up. In the end, it took me out with a single punch to the guts," he said. Now all of them were more scared. "One punch? That bird creature punched you, and it basically put you on the edge of death?" Kaminari exclaimed. Midoriya strangely just chuckled when he heard that. "Well, it was made to take down All Might. I'm more surprised how I'm still alive." After he said that, he checked to see how low his health was. Shockingly, his health was past the critical state. How he was still conscious was a complete mystery to him, perhaps adrenaline. Had he not used Kirishima's quirk, he would have been blasted apart. "Dear God. And I thought Mr. Aizawa and 13 were injured badly," Zero said suddenly. When he said that, Midoriya slowly glanced around to see that Aizawa was lying nearby. While he was bleeding bad, it was probably minor to what his own body would like when he changed back to normal. 13 was way less severe in that only the back of the suit was destroyed with no other apparent injuries. "Anyone else injured as well?" he asked. "Well, everyone here is fine except for you, Mr. Aizawa," and 13 Yaoyorozu said. He sighed in relief that most of his classmates were not hurt, though the others were unaccounted for and cannot be sure whether they are seriously injured or not. Maybe the pros were almost here. Maybe they going to burst through the entrance and make sure they all got back alive. Those hopes ran through his head as he silently prayed that everything will just go right for once. Then, he saw it. Coming up from the stairs, the Namu has just appeared in the line of his sight. It was slowly taking one step after another, purposely taking its sweet time. It was basically telling them that to dread the inevitable fate that would come upon them when it reached them. Instantly, Midoriya paled to a ghostly shade of white. His breathing had been halted for a moment as his mind was too distracted by the situation at hand than just breathing. Even though he wasn't able to move a muscle, his whole body was visible trembling in fear. "Hey, what's wrong?" Kaminari asked once he noticed the huge change in expression from pain to terrified. Midoriya turned to the group and said one word: "Run." They all turned around to see what he was telling them to run from, and they immediately understood when they saw it. "Everyone, run!" he shouted loudly. He knew that the leader ordered it to target him specifically. If the others were to get away, they had a better chance to survive while it was finishing him off. That was what he thought his plan would go. But one thing went differently. "And no, we can't leave you behind," Uraraka shouted as courageously as she could, even though she was shaking more than him. The rest had similar cases with a face that showed some confidence, while the trembling of their bodies says otherwise. It was quite impressive that they were able to look at the monstrosity and not run away immediately. While useful when becoming a hero, it didn't change the fact the beast. "We're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're so gonna die," Kaminari's frightened voice kept getting increased by every step the Namu made towards them. As it got closer, Midoriya was saying his goodbyes to each of his classmates, even if they only know each for a short amount of time. This would be their place where their short-lived lives would end. Or so he thought. Boom asterisk with a loud crash. The entrance door gets blasted apart by what seemed like blunt force. Everyone near turned their heads towards the direction of the commotion. A haze of smoke was covering the front, making it impossible to see who the person was. "There is no need to fear any more, students." "Why?" Everyone quickly recognized the booming voice that belonged to their teacher and the most famous hero. "Because I am here," All Might shouted that echoed through the entire Ostja. All the students were relieved to see help has finally arrived and right at the perfect time. Though, they all noticed something obviously different with the hero. He wasn't smiling. Instead, it was replaced by a grim frown that showed he was dead serious and angry. Over by the two villains, the hand villain was completely ecstatic by long-awaited appearance of his most hated hero. "Finally! I was wondering when you were going to show up. Now, I can test to see how you fight against my toy, Namu." Quickly after the command was given, Namu stopped its previous task and charged at the pro with blinding speed. Unlike Midoriya, All Might was easily able to react fast enough to counter the punch that was thrown at him. When the two fists collided, both of them seemed to be completely stationary, while the Namu's skin was rippling along the arm, much to All Might's surprise. More importantly, the shockwaves of the attacks caused buffeting winds that blew away everything and everyone around. All the nearby students, except Midoriya, had found something to cling onto, while he had to grab by Ciro's tape so he wouldn't be blown away like a leaf. Back to the two powerhouses, the two exchanged punches after another, each time resulting in a stalemate. Then, the Namu suddenly grabbed All Might's arm with both of its hands and leaned back to judo throw him. It was able to get him overhead and on the ground, but not do its intended purpose. All Might quickly adjusted his body to land in his feet, and then used the momentum to hurl the Namu over his head with one arm. This attempt worked, and it was sent flying down towards the main plaza where its master and the hordes of unconscious villains laid. When it landed, it got up without delay and turned to look at its opponent. "That creature is quite troubling. It's strong enough to tank my punch and not be hurt in the slightest." "How?" All Might said under his breath so that no one would hear, which one of them did. "All Might. That thing was created so it can beat you. It somehow has both a shock absorption and regeneration quirk," Midoriya yelled. All Might was shocked when he heard the last part. "Two quirks? Never mind, questions come later after they are captured. What matters is that they pay for what they have done," he said before charging into the battle. Again, both the heroes and the creature's attacks cancelled each other out. They both continued to throw punches at each other, until one could hardly see their arms at the speed they were going. Neither of them looked like they were going to back down from their standoff. The collective shockwaves from all the attacks made what seemed like a hurricane-like effect where winds blew anything that was in the building. The students near the entrance had an even harder time trying to hold themselves down. Midoriya was having it the worse as he barely had the stamina to cling on to anything against the winds. More than once, he nearly lost his grip before narrowly catching himself. He watched as the two powerhouses continued to duke it out. Each time the Namu landed a punch on All Might, he would return a punch back. Even so, he was able to notice some small details that probably no one else had picked up on. First, All Might was actually landing more hits than taking it. It was just quite difficult to see with the blurring fists. Second, the Namu was actually getting pushed back little by little. As each second passed by, those two details were slowly becoming more and more obvious. Though it was taking quite a while, All Might was beginning to get the upper hand. Weren't you listening to that annoying brat earlier? My Namu has shock absorption and regeneration. It was made to take you at 100% of your power, Shigaraki monologued, completely oblivious to what was really happening. Yeah, so what? He said it had shock absorption, not nullification. That means there's a limit to how much it can take. All Might yelled as he started to increase the speed and power of his attack. If this thing was made to take me on at my best, then I just have to go beyond that and force you to surrender. By now, the Namu wasn't able to get in a single punch in as the attacks kept getting faster and faster. The winds were now extremely intense, breaking up the ground around the two and causing some of the formations in the different zones to sway. The students could only stare in awe at the sight of the intense fight happening in front of their eyes. The amount of power behind each punch was completely incomprehensible. Most likely enough to take out entire buildings from just shockwaves alone. All Might then grabbed the Namu's arm and jumped into the air. They almost reached the height of the dome's ceiling. When they reached the peak of their ascent, All Might spun around and threw the beast towards the ground. The area it landed in was then wrecked from the force of the impact. As it tried to get up, All Might landed right in front of it. I'm pretty sure you heard these words before, but I'll tell you what they really mean, he said while pulling back his right arm. Push past your limits, go beyond, plus ultra. With a powerful punch, the Namu was sent flying through the dome of the USG and into the sky. The force of the punch caused an effect that was almost exactly like an earthquake. Every student in each zone felt shaking of both the ground and the air. The ones that did see were at a complete loss of word at what they just witnessed. Even the villains had dumbstruck expressions by seeing their trump card get sent hurtling into the stratosphere. The next few moments could only be described as rather peaceful and serene, like when a huge hurricane had just subsided, and all that was left was a calm aftermath. No, this can't be right. How can my Namu be defeated like this? You cheated, Shigaraki growled in anger, breaking the silence. He looked ready to brutally murder the next person that he sees. Ha! Give it up, villains. You have lost. Just surrender and turn yourselves in, All Might demanded with a strained smile. Small wisps of steam were coming off his body. It didn't look like much to the average person, but only Midoriya knew the true nature of the smoke. He's at his limit. Any longer, and he'll change to his actual form, he thought as he remembered what happened the day he first got his powers. The day he learned All Might's secret. It would be bad if this number of people, especially the villains, were to find out about his weakened form. Hopefully, the villains would surrender, and the teachers will make sure the students didn't see. Back with the villains, the mist villain already knew. It would be suicidal to charge at the hero, now, when their ultimate weapon was beaten and more heroes would be coming any second. Shigaraki, we need to retreat. Our plan has failed and can't let them capture us, he reasoned. Shigaraki snapped his head towards him as if he was going to argue back. But he seemed to calm down after a few seconds. Fine, let's get out of here. This day has been pissing me off enough, he said before turning to the hero. All Might, you win this time. But remember, I will kill you in the future and prove how fragile this society is without you. With those final words, both of them were enveloped in the purple mist and teleported to who knows where. All Might then sighed in relief and frustration at the fact how they ran away. 1 hour later, after the pros and police arrived, all the villains except the mist villain and hand villain were captured and arrested. All of them were just your everyday alley thug, meaning they were only there to distract the students. Speaking of which, all the students were found in each zone in a relatively unharmed condition. None of them, excluding Midoriya who passed out and was immediately taken to the infirmary, had any serious injuries. The two teachers were in the hospital, but the doctors confirmed they would make a successful recovery. Now, the police were asking down questions to the students to find as much information as possible. Hey guys, you alright? That attack was something else, Kirishima asked after he was finished. Yeah, I was at the entrance. That mist guy was pretty good. We were lucky to have Uraraka float the guy so Ida had a chance to escape, Zero said, while sighing. Still, manly for you to fight them. I was in the collapsed city zone with Bakugo. You should have seen how many villains he took down. Guy's a natural, Kirishima said, while sticking his thumb in the boy's direction. Bakugo just replied with a confident smirk. Hey, you guys want awesome? Kaminari suddenly popped in after hearing them. Midoriya was kicking butt back at the mountain zone. He probably took down the most villains out of the three of us. He used those different abilities, like Gyro's sound wave and Zero's tape. Zero grinned at the fact how his quirk was used by his classmate, while Kirishima nodded. Kaminari continued his recounting of the event. Not only that, he also stood up against that huge bird guy. Really? The one that All Might had to take down? The two boys exclaimed in shock. Yep, though it was mostly him just dodging its attacks. And it was the one that landed him in the infirmary. Suddenly, Gyro and Yaoyorozu heard their conversation, and walked up to them. Hey, what's this about Midoriya? Gyro asked. Oh, Kaminari was just telling us about what Midoriya did during the attack, Zero explained. Ah, he did help us on more than one occasion. He stopped villains that were trying to sneak up on us, Yaoyorozu said with a small smile. Yep. And then he also took it upon himself to distract the bird creature long enough so we could escape. Even though it nearly killed him, Gyro pointed out. They small group hoped that their classmate would make a safe recovery. Back at the infirmary, Midoriya had just woken up from his short-term coma. Looking around, he quickly noticed Recovery Girl sitting right next to him. Good, you're awake. I've been waiting for a while till now, she said with a smile. As he tried to process what had happened, the memories of the USJ came flooding back. Is everyone okay? He asked worryingly. Recovery Girl stared at him for a few seconds before chuckling to herself. Of course you worry more about your friend's safety than your own. Don't worry, none of the other students are injured. Your teachers are in the hospital, but they should be better after a few days. More importantly, you should know how close you were to dying. The amount of injuries you accumulated was like you ran over by a train. She scolded while lightly hitting him over the head with her cane. Rubbing the spot where he was hit, he gave a sheepish smile in response. His entire body was exhausted, and he felt like he could sleep for an entire day. After Recovery Girl finished doing a final checkup on him, he was allowed to get some extra sleep to regain his lost stamina. The sweet embrace of sleep never felt any more satisfying as he drifted off. Snowball fight. As the snow fell gently from the skies, you could find Class 1 engaged in an extreme snowball fight. Being an even split of two teams, snowballs were raining down at dangerous speeds. Of the 20 students, 3 of them were especially motivated. Midoriya was simultaneously throwing and shooting down snowballs with one hand for each task. Bakugo was using small explosions to launch the snowballs at faster speeds without melting them. And Todoroki was more or less a snowball maker that supplied his team with an almost endless supply of ammunition. Bring it on, Deku! Bakugo shouted while winding up to throw. Before he could, he was interrupted by a snowball to the face. The force from said ball was strong enough to knock him over into the ground. Everyone laughed at the sight while also taking 5 steps back in preparation for what was going to happen. As expected, everything in a 5-foot radius around the boy was blown up with a huge explosion. Bastard! I'll kill you for that, he screamed before continuing his assault, with more strength and viciousness. The match went on with huge grins on all of their faces. Christmas tree. That should do it, Kirishima said as she put the final ornament on the tree. The entire class stepped back and took a look at the Christmas that they had just finished. It was tall enough that it nearly touched the ceiling. The entire thing was littered with ornaments and lights that shined the colors of the rainbow. On top of the tree, they had put an All Might ornament of him giving a thumbs up. That idea had obviously been suggested by Midoriya, who was completely red when he asked. Their favorite part of the tree were the custom ornaments of them in their hero costumes. Yaoyorozu offered to make them too as a fun idea when Kaminari said that he would look cool on the tree. Deku, this tree really turned out good, Uraraka exclaimed. Yeah, it's nice that we will work on it together. This is the first Christmas we are spending together as a class, Midoriya replied with a smile. So, what should we do next? He turned to face her when he asked the question, but she didn't seem to be paying attention. She was staring at him with focused eyes. Uraraka, he asked nervously after a few seconds of it. There was still no response from her. It was really starting to creep him out. You kinda look like a Christmas tree, she suddenly said. Huh? Your hair. It reminds me of the tree, she said while pointing towards said tree. That was definitely a new one. People have usually called him broccoli or bush head, but never a tree. Did he actually look like a Christmas tree? Unfortunately, some of the other classmates heard their little exchange and decided to join in. You are right. His green hair and red face make him the perfect tree, Kaminari said with a huge grin. Yeah, but we can make him better, Ashido said mischievously, while grabbing a spare ornament. Slowly, some of them began to surround Midoriya with evil grins on their faces. Gee guys, what are you doing? Wait, no, no, no! He screamed before the students pounced on him. A few minutes later, Aizawa regretted stepping into the common room at the moment. He had heard some screaming, and rather slowly walked over to where his students were to go check on them. He honestly expected that one of them angered Bakugo and faced his explosive temper. What he didn't expect was to find almost all the class laughing and taking pictures of Midoriya, who for some reason had ornaments attached to his hair and lights wrapped all around his body. In addition to his beet red face, he was the personification of a Christmas tree, as most of the students laughed at him. The only one that seemed not to was Ada, who was chastising them for forcing him into it. I don't get paid enough, was the last thing he said before leaving the room. Mistletoe panic. Ashido was on a mission, a romantic Christmas mission. Get her classmates to kiss each other using mistletoe. While normally she could have just placed them at random places and just hope for the best, but she wanted to get guaranteed scenarios. To do so, she analyzed her friends for the past week to find out their movement patterns and where they usually talk with someone. From someone's favorite spot on the couch to the exact place where two classmates tend to run into each other each morning. Nothing got past this matchmaker. Going by her notes, she put the mistletoes in positions and waited. The first spot was in the kitchen, right next to the pantry. More often than not, Midoriya and Uraraka would run into each other there at noon to grab a quick snack before doing homework. When the two got there, she gave Hagakure the cue to call them out. Oh, look who's under the mistletoe, she squealed while longing at the two. Everyone around stopped and looked at the spot above the two. As she said, the infamous plant was hanging right above their heads. Both Midoriya and Uraraka immediately flushed red and started to incoherently stutter. After about a minute of it, Uraraka quickly pulled Midoriya in for a kiss and ran away embarrassed. He stood there for a few seconds before promptly falling over and passing out. As the guys tried to shake him awake, Ashido sneaked away to find her next targets. Pair, Kaminari's Jiro. This spot was above a specific couch, where Jiro would usually sit and Kaminari would always drop in to make a joke. When she called them out, Kaminari looked surprised while Jiro looked red and shocked. What was even more shocking was when Kaminari shrugged his shoulders and gave Jiro a quick peck on the lips. This of course earned him direct sound waves to his head. Pair, Todoroki Arazu. This spot was actually above Midoriya's room, as the two would go over there to study with him and some other people. It went perfectly as they both were under it right before they knocked on the door. She had sent Kirishima to go as her stand-in and record the entire thing. It was probably the most entertaining one since Yaoyorozu was completely flustered, while Todoroki looked confused by why they had to kiss. Thankfully, Ashido planned for it and taught Kirishima some manipulative phrases to push them in the right direction. It worked out as Todoroki kissed Yaoyorozu because, I am too tired to even listen to your explanation. The day went on with some other awesome mistletoe moments that no one could explain how they happened so perfectly. What was better was how all of them were recorded and preserved for future reference.